I came back after a week visiting my sister, a small gift bag in my hand, and the same eager feeling in my chest of flopping onto my old familiar armchair. But what greeted me wasn't children's voices or the usual smell of coffee. It was my belongings scattered all over the lawn. Clothes, our wedding photo frame, a few journals with torn covers, the wool blanket I'd knitted myself. On the door, a sheet of paper slapped on with silver tape flapped at the corner, scrawled with, "Sorry, Mom. There's no space. My in-laws are moving in. No warning, no guilty look." My daughter-in-law leaned against the doorway, lips curled, voice flat as ice. "Don't stand there, Mom. The neighbors are watching." And they were Mrs. Patel from across the street quietly pulled her curtain down. My son hung his head, silent like a stranger. I could hear my heart crack inside my skull, but my hand unlocked my phone, calmer than ever. I opened the camera, shot every angle, recorded the note, the scene of my daughter-in-law staring at me like I didn't belong. It would all be evidence. I saved the file with one title: "The Day I Was Thrown Out of My Own Home." They thought they'd pushed me out of their lives, but in that exact moment, I started stepping back into mine. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. My name is Dorothy Kane, 69, widowed for over 20 years, living in Charleston, South Carolina. I've been a nurse my whole life, a job that taught me to care for others so much I forgot I needed care too. I used to think old age would mean mornings with birdsong and dinners gathered around the table with grandkids. But that day, right on the doorstep of the house I paid every mortgage payment for, I learned a life can flip in a single afternoon. When I picked up the shattered frame and looked at my late husband's face inside, what I felt wasn't just pain, it was cold. The street wind rattled that paper like it was laughing at me. I looked up at my son, Nathan, the boy I raised, with both hands, the child I sat up all night with when he had pneumonia at 8. Now he stared at the floor like he was waiting for me to vanish. Mrs. Patel, my Indian neighbor of more than 10 years, hurried over, eyes wide. "Dorothy, what is happening? Did they do this to you?" I just nodded. My voice was quiet, but each word was firm. "Please do me one thing, Patel. Be a witness. Snap the clock, the date and time. They're going to have to answer for this." She nodded and fumbled for her phone, hands shaking. I kept photographing every corner, every item tossed like trash: the knit blanket, the wedding photo of me and Tom, the mug my grandchild once painted a heart on for me. Every click cut like a blade, but I knew, without evidence, pain gets erased like it never existed. I walked around the house and peered through the window. In the living room, Brianna, my daughter-in-law, was directing two men moving furniture. She said something, then laughed. A light laugh that stabbed like a needle. I turned away, tightened my grip on the suitcase handle. Part of me wanted to storm in and confront her, but the other part, the part trained by years of nursing, chose calm. I took out my phone and opened the asset management app the lawyer set up for me when my husband passed. Under real estate, it showed clearly, 218 Maplewood Drive owner, Dorothy Kane. I tapped the little padlock icon and saved copies of all documents: insurance, property tax, title deed. Brianna's voice came from behind me. "You don't have to make a big deal out of this, Mom. We'll send you rent if you need it." I turned, and my look shut her up. "No need, Brianna. This house is mine." I rolled my suitcase to the curb and breathed slowly. Nathan called after me, voice breaking. "Mom, don't overdo it. I'll explain later." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to explain. A small moving truck pulled up. I asked the driver to help pack what was still intact. Mrs. Patel stood beside me, eyes wet. "Dorothy, where will you go now?" "I have a place," I said with a small smile. Somewhere they don't know. 3 years ago, when I saw Brianna tightening her grip on my son, I bought a small apartment downtown. I said it was an investment, but deep down I knew it was a backup door to freedom. Today, it's exactly where I needed to be. On the drive, I stayed oddly calm. The feelings dissolved into silence. At a red light, I glanced in the rearview mirror, saw myself sitting up straight, gray hair, clear eyes, not a tear. I whispered, no yelling, no crying, just action. By the time I reached the apartment, Charleston's sky had turned late afternoon gold. I opened the door. Dust glimmered in the light, but the air felt quiet and safe. A small 2-bedroom with oak floors and clean white walls, simple but mine. Completely mine. I set down my suitcase, flipped on the lights, and began placing a few things. Tom's photo, a Bible, the old tea kettle. Mrs. Patel texted, "I saved the photos with date and time. Don't worry, Dorothy." I texted back a thank you emoji. I sat at the table and took the wrinkled note from my pocket, smoothing it flat. The words, "Sorry, Mom," were blurred by rain. I slipped it into a file folder labeled Case 1. Everything was starting to line up like I'd filed patient charts for 40 years. With system, order, and evidence, I opened my laptop and created a new file named Operation Freedom. Inside, I made the plan. Gather evidence, photos, statements, witnesses. Contact my husband's old lawyer, Mr. Avery Grant. Book a real estate agent to assess the house. Review bank accounts and savings. Prepare a legal 30-day notice if needed. Outside the window, the city lit up. Car horns mingled with Charleston's sea breeze drifting in. I sipped tea and felt its warmth spread. In that quiet, I saw this clearly. My silence was no longer weakness, it was strength taking shape. I texted my sister Marisol. "I'm okay. I need a few hours to reset the board." She replied with a heart, as if she knew this battle was one I had to walk through myself. That night I sat by the window, watching the Ashley River catch the soft yellow lights. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote the first line, Day 1, starting over, not from zero, but from self-respect. I checked my phone and saw the photo folder named The Day I Was Thrown Out of My Own Home. I opened each picture. Brianna's eyes, Nathan's bowed head, the door slamming behind me. Then I smiled. No, I won't go back and beg them to open that door. I will strike the gavel of the law, and when it sounds, every one of them will have to listen. Outside, Street Phillips church bells drifted gently. I said quietly to myself, "Dorothy, it's time to live the rest of your life on your own terms." And I knew that tonight in this little apartment, a new woman had just been born from silence. My apartment is on the 8th floor of an old building in downtown Charleston. 2 small bedrooms, light oak floors, a big window looking down on the rush along King Street. The afternoon sun slants through the blinds, coating everything in a warm, honey-soft glow. When I turn the key and the door swings open, the smell of dust and old wood rushes in, but oddly, I don't feel lost, I feel free. I start cleaning. Wipe the cabinets, wash the curtains, take out the trash, throw the windows wide for sunlight and sea air. Each motion feels like shaking off layers I've carried for years. In the bedroom, the small safe is still tucked under the wooden desk, the place I stored documents when I bought this apartment 3 years ago. I kneel, set the combination, and check every envelope, deed, bank book, insurance copies, papers proving ownership of the old house. Everything's intact. I rest my hand on the stack like I'm touching a spine of my life, solid, quiet, and untouchable unless I allow it. After I sort the closet, I call my sister. "Marisol, I'm back in Charleston." She's silent for a beat, then her voice breaks with anger. Dorothy, tell me, did they really do that? They threw your things on the lawn? Why didn't you kick them all out? That house is yours. I chuckle softly. I will, but not the way they expect. I have evidence. I have the law. You're always too calm, she sighs. If it were me, I'd have set off a storm. I glance around the apartment where sunlight washes the white walls and say gently, no storm needed. In still weather, you can finally see where to go. After we hang up, I sit at the table and check my phone. There's a new message from Mrs. Patel, my old neighbor. She sent a string of photos from her window. A large moving truck parked in front of my house, an older man with gray hair, and a woman in a floral dress, Brianna's parents, hauling things inside. The message reads, "They moved their stuff in the day you left. Didn't wait for you. I'm sorry to tell you this. I study the photos, feeling like someone just nailed the past shut with iron spikes. But I don't get angry. I save them into a folder titled Evidence 1, Property Occupation. Then I set the phone down, pour a black coffee, and sit on the balcony. The sunset sky burns orange, so beautiful I suddenly regret all the evenings like this I ignored for years. I open my laptop and log into my bank. The monthly pension still lands on time, plus the small savings I built as a nurse, enough to live comfortably for years. I open another document, financial safety, and go line by line. Health insurance, home insurance, investment yields, property tax. Everything is tidy and clear. I've always been careful, but never have I felt more grateful for it than now. If I hadn't prepared, I'd have nothing today. I pull out pen and paper and write the header, 90-day rebirth plan. Under it, I make neat columns. 1. Safety. Update locks, install cameras, change passwords on all accounts. 2. Legal. Contact lawyer, verify ownership, prep legal notice. 3. Relationship cleanup. Limit contact with Nathan and Brianna, communicate in writing only. 4. Rebuild self. Morning yoga, reread books I love, cook meals I actually like. Looking at the lines, I laugh. Turns out, after all this, I can still make plans for myself, not for anyone else. I open a new notebook, title the first page, Declaration of Dignity. I write slowly, each stroke clear. From today on, I will no longer beg to be loved, respected, or accepted in my own home. I am the owner, the keeper, the one with final say. No one can make me bow my head unless I choose to. When I set the pen down, my chest feels lighter. Maybe for the first time in years, I can hear my own voice clearly. Then I turn on the computer and create a folder. Digital dossier. Dorothy Kane. I save every piece of evidence. Photos, videos, texts, utility bills, property taxes, insurance policies, everything proving that house is mine. I build a spreadsheet, set a unique password, and back it up to an external drive. Each step is cool and precise, like a mental surgery for which I'm my own surgeon. That evening, I eat my first dinner in the apartment: toast, chicken soup, and a glass of leftover red wine from last year. The warm light bouncing off the wood table makes the room feel strangely cozy. I turn on the radio, let old jazz mingle with the breeze. It's simple, but every breath tastes like freedom. At 10 p.m., a text pings from an old colleague, Sandra, now a real estate agent. She writes, "Heard what happened through Marisol. I know a great agent named Ryan Cole, young but kind and trustworthy. Want me to have him reach out?" I reply right away, "Yes. Please send me his number. Thank you, Sandra." I jot the info into my planner. Next to a small line, "Prepare the rightful path." I know exactly what I'm about to do. Not revenge, not destroying anyone, but reclaiming the right to stand in my own name. Before bed, I step onto the balcony. Charleston's night wind carries salt and the faraway hum of boats at anchor. The street lights below look like stars fallen to the ground. I tilt my head back, breathe deep, and feel a strange calm settle in. Then I go back inside, open my notebook to the last page of the day, and write 3 big words, my hand a little shaky but firm: do not back down. I set the pen down and look at the words for a long time. They feel like a vow not to anyone else but to me. That night, for the first time in years, I sleep deeply. No dreams, no dread, just the sweet quiet of a beginning. And when the first light slips through the blinds, I wake up, brew hot coffee, and open the windows for the sun. Sparrows chatter on the balcony, and the river wind drifts in briny and fresh. I take a sip, sit at the table, look over the plans I've made, and whisper, "Dorothy Kane, welcome back." One old chapter has closed, and the small key in my hand, the key to this apartment, now opens more than a door. It opens a new life. The next morning, I wake to sparrows and the smell of coffee filling the little apartment. In the quiet, I look out at Charleston's sky brightening and ask myself, what brought me here, to 69, alone in a backup apartment, starting over? I lean back, wrap both hands around the hot cup, and memories unspool like an old film still creased by time. Tom, my husband, died on an autumn afternoon. The stroke hit like a slash. One minute he was talking about repainting the fence, the next he was on the ground in the backyard, still gripping the brush. Nathan, just 20 then, screamed for me. I ran out, knelt beside Tom, and tried to pound his heart back with useless compressions. The ambulance came too late, when they pulled the sheet over him. The fall wind carried the smell of damp wood and lavender from the garden, a scent I couldn't stand for years after. From that day on, my world shrank to 2, me and Nathan. I sold Tom's car and kept the house we spent our youth paying off. To get by, I took a part-time job as a public library aide and tutored neighborhood kids in math at night. Life was tight but meaningful. I made breakfast every morning for my son, waited up each night for him to get home from college, listened to stories about his friends and professors. I was terrified the hole his dad left would swallow him, so I tried to fill it with presence and love. Many nights Nathan couldn't sleep, slipping quietly into the kitchen to sit at the table, eyes red. I brewed mint tea and sat across from him, saying nothing, just resting a hand on his shoulder. We sat like that, letting the warmth from the cups speak its own language. On those nights I thought, we'll get through this. As long as we're together, we'll be okay. So I made that my promise to myself, and I lived stronger than ever. Nathan graduated with a logistics degree, and I cried through the whole ceremony. I remember him hugging me and whispering, "Mom, I did it. I want you to be proud." I was. More than anything. Not long after, he met Brianna, the young secretary at his new company. They met at a work event, and everything moved so fast I couldn't catch up. "I still remember our first meeting," Brianna smiled softly, spoke gently, called me Mrs. Kane in a honey-sweet voice. I thought, my son is lucky. When they got engaged, I cried happy tears. I sold a few of my mother's old jewelry pieces and paid nearly half the wedding costs. I wanted my son to start without worry. I believed his happiness would be mine, too. The wedding was in a small church draped in white flowers. Nathan wore a gray suit and stood in the aisle with the smile of a man about to have a family. I sat in the front row in my old blue dress, chest swelling with pride. I thought Tom would be proud if he could see our boy that day. After the wedding, I invited them to live with me. My 3-bedroom house near downtown had a small yard, a white fence, and the apple tree Tom planted before he died. I said, "Stay here until you two get settled. Don't rush to buy a house." Brianna smiled, thanked me, and held my hand. I believed she meant it. At first it really was happy. I made breakfast, Brianna washed the dishes, Nathan drove to work, and I watered the plants, tidied up, and knitted on the porch with the radio on. It felt like a classic American family, warm and easy. But things started changing in tiny ways. First with dinner. "You cook great, Mom, but my family doesn't really do a lot of garlic," Brianna said. Then laundry. "Mom, our towels get folded a different way." Then the smell of the house. "It might be because you make soup a lot, the scent sticks to the sofa." Her voice was always soft, but every line jabbed like a pin. I didn't react. I quietly changed, cooked less, opened more windows, bought the room spray she liked. I told myself, peace matters. Nathan has already lost enough. Then my dining table got pushed aside. They bought a new one and put it in the center, while the old table I loved was moved to the porch. Once, when I ate alone out there, Nathan came out, squeezed my shoulder. "Mom, don't be upset. Brianna just wants things organized." I smiled and murmured, "I understand. Do what makes you comfortable." But my eyes blurred when I turned away. I started shrinking myself. Not because anyone ordered it, but because I was afraid to crack my son's thin peace. I ate later than they did, spoke less at dinner, and spent more time in my room reading and listening to music, pretending it was my choice. But really, I was fading out. Then Ethan was born, my first grandchild. I cried when I heard Brianna was pregnant. I made soup, knit, sweaters, set up the nursery. I thought this would change things. Surely a baby would bring us closer. But right after he was born, Brianna drew an invisible line. "Sorry, Mom," she said, smoothing her hair. "The doctor says older people shouldn't hold babies too much. It affects their immunity." I forced a smile. "Oh, I understand." But something inside me tore. She wouldn't let me hold him, bathe him, or rock him to sleep. I was allowed to stand and watch, like a visitor. Nathan was busy and always said, "Mom, she's just anxious. Don't take it to heart." I nodded, but my heart slowed, beat by beat. 2 years later, Lily arrived. She was a small light, but the rules grew stricter. Brianna taped a tight schedule on the fridge: meal times, nap times, bath times, no disturbance times. I was pushed further out of orbit. One evening, Lily was fussy. I hurried in and reached to lift her, but Brianna pulled her back. "It's okay, Mom, I've got it." Her eyes on me were glass cold. Nathan stood behind her, saying nothing, scratching his head, avoiding my eyes. I knew then my role in that house was over. I started spending time walking, stopping by the old library, reading, or sitting alone in the park watching other seniors push their grandkids in strollers, my heart aching and a little jealous. Maybe that's why I bought that small apartment, to have a safe place in case one day I truly had no place in my own home. I still remember the first night I slept there, when it was my secret house. I didn't turn on the lights, just opened the window and let the night breeze move the curtains. I didn't know then that choice would become my lifeline later. Sitting in that apartment now, looking back, I see I didn't lose everything in one day. It was taken bit by bit, so politely, so gently, until nothing was left but empty space. I took another sip of coffee, breathed deep, and let the old hurt loosen with my breath. Then I told myself, "That's enough, Dorothy. From today on, no one gets to dim you anymore." I remember clearly the first time Brianna mentioned her parents. It was a spring evening. Nathan had just gotten home from work, and I was setting the table. Brianna spoke casually, like small talk. "My parents are selling their old house in Greenville. They're planning to come down to Charleston and stay a few weeks while they look for a new place. That's okay, right, Mom?" I looked up and saw Nathan ladling soup, not looking at me, just giving a small nod. I answered, "If it's just a few weeks, that's fine. The house is big. 2 more people won't be a problem." Brianna smiled, her voice so sweet I didn't realize that sentence was the seed of a long plan. After that, I didn't hear anything more. Life went on as usual. I cooked, watered the plants, cared for the kids, and Brianna stayed busy with her phone and appointments. Only once did I hear her talking behind a bedroom door. Voice lowered. No. Wait a few more weeks. She's about to leave. I didn't know who she was, but a strange chill ran down my back. A few days later, Marisol called, urging me to visit her in Savannah. Dorothy, I miss you so much. It's been 2 years since we saw each other. Come for a few days, I have something to tell you. I hesitated. Something felt off. But when I saw Nathan and Brianna both encouraging me, Brianna even booked the bus ticket, I told myself I was being paranoid. I left Charleston on Friday morning with a small suitcase, planning to return early in the week. I never imagined that in those 4 days, my entire life would be cleared out of the home I had kept. When Mrs. Patel told me, I learned how smoothly it all happened. Saturday morning, a moving truck pulled up in front of my house. Brianna stood giving orders, and Nathan wasn't there because he was working. The neighbors thought I had moved out because Brianna put it so nicely. She decided to move closer to her sister. We're helping her with her things. Everyone believed it. Some even congratulated them that Mrs. Kane finally gets to rest after so many years. That few weeks staying over turned into a permanent takeover, and I, the real owner, was pushed out of my own home by light words. Hearing it from Mrs. Patel, I didn't fall apart like people might think. I was quiet for a long time, then gave a thin smile. At least they waited until I was gone so they wouldn't have to look me in the eye. That evening, I sat by the apartment window, watching lights spill onto the Ashley River, and for the first time in my life I felt grateful to myself. Grateful to the woman from 3 years ago who bought this apartment. Grateful for the caution I once called paranoid. Without this place, I might have had to stay with someone and be labeled the mother who got thrown out. I brewed mint tea, the scent spreading in the quiet room. The first sip made me remember what Tom used to say when he was alive. You help people too much, Dorothy. Remember, kindness needs to be in black and white. I laughed back then, thinking he was teasing. Now I understand. Kindness without paperwork is just a legal empty space, and someone will fill it with their schemes. I stood and opened the safe. The yellow light hit the gray steel, cold but steady. I took out every document: the house title, property insurance, property tax papers, repair contracts with my name on every line. I laid them neatly on the table, each page stamped clearly. Not one line with Nathan's name. Not one letter with Brianna's. I smoothed a corner and said quietly, "This house is still mine, and it will be handled as mine." I felt like I could hear the heartbeat of a woman once dismissed, starting up again, stronger than ever. And have you ever had to stay silent to keep your dignity like that? If you have, leave a line in the comments someone out. There may need your story to find the courage to stand up. I opened my phone and sent Nathan a single line. I got the message on the door. No blame, no question mark. I knew that was enough. They'd read it, understand, and start to worry. I powered down the phone and set it aside. What I felt wasn't anger anymore, it was absolute clarity. Before, I would have reacted with tears. Now, I would act with reason. I took my notebook and wrote the first checklist for my countermove. 1. Agent, find someone to assess the house and guide me through the sale. 2. Lawyer, confirm ownership and use rights, and the rules for removing occupants. 3. Notice to vacate. Prepare a legal 30-day notice. End quote. 4. Minimal communication. Speak only when necessary. No arguing, no pleading. 5. Evidence log. Keep every photo, message, and audio clip relevant. When I finished, I rested the pen on the page and took a long breath. This time, I hold the law, they hold feelings. And the law doesn't cry. The next morning, I went to the bank to print property tax and home insurance statements. The clerk looked over the files and said, "You keep your documents really well. Most older clients can't manage this." I smiled. I used to be a nurse. We're used to careful records. One small mistake can cost a life. In life, one wrong signature can cost you your home. The young woman looked at me with admiration, but I only felt sad. Being careful isn't a choice anymore, it's survival for someone who's been betrayed. At noon, I got a text from Mrs. Patel. "I just heard Brianna's relatives telling people you moved out on your own. They're bragging the house belongs to the new family now." I read it and smiled faintly. New family, sure. They can swap furniture and change the air, but they can't change the paperwork. That afternoon I sat at the table as sunlight slipped through the thin curtain and laid bright stripes on the wood like a gentle hand. I scrolled through old photos on my computer. Tom laughing under the apple tree, little Nathan holding a blue kite, me in an apron standing in a patch of lavender. Each picture was a reminder. I built this life with work, love, and loss. No one gets to take it with a sloppy note. That night I sat by the window and wrote a letter not to send, but to set myself free. "Nathan, I'm not angry at you, but I will never forgive your silence while others erased my name from my own home. I'm not seeking revenge. I will only take back what's mine by the law, with reason and with dignity." I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and put it in the drawer. Maybe I'll give it to him one day, or maybe never. Writing it was enough to make my heart lighter. When the clock struck 11 p.m., I shut my laptop and looked at the checklist on the wall. Each bullet was a step I would take not to prove anything, but to remind myself that my life is still in my hands. I made another cup of tea and stepped onto the balcony. The night sky was full of stars, the city calm. Somewhere in that old house, they were probably sleeping well. Sure, I'd vanished for good. I smiled, breathed in the night, and whispered, "No, Brianna. This old mother isn't gone. I'm just not coming back with feelings this time. I'm coming back with the law." The river breeze swept through, cool and clean. I closed the door and wrote one small line in my journal before bed. "Tomorrow, the action begins." Then I turned off the lights. In the dark, I could hear my heartbeat, not the beat of someone weak, but of a woman who has taken back the steering wheel of her life. On Monday morning, just after I rinsed my first coffee cup of the day, there was a soft, cautious knock, the kind people use when they know they're about to face the truth. I opened the door. Nathan stood there, hands in his pockets, head down. Morning light showed the worry lines on his forehead. My 45-year-old son looked strangely small. I didn't know they'd come so soon, Mom," he began, voice shaky and rough. I tilted my head to let him in. The apartment was small but bright and neat. Nathan glanced around, maybe surprised it didn't look like the picture someone had painted of a pitiful mother thrown out. I calmly poured 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of him. "Drink," I said evenly. "It's the same roast from your father's old shop." He didn't touch the cup, just nodded. I sat across from him, fingers laced, eyes steady on my son. "You said they came earlier than planned?" Nathan nodded, avoiding my eyes. I didn't think they'd move in for good. Brianna said just a few weeks. You know, they're looking for a place. I cut in, voice low and clear. A few weeks isn't a permit to occupy. I only want to know one thing. I tilted my head, gaze fixed on him. Who signed off letting them stay? That question popped his excuses like a pin. He went silent. His finger tapped the cup, his eyes drifting. I didn't add a word. The room got so quiet I could hear the clock ticking, like it was counting each beat of his shame. Finally, he sighed. "I was wrong, Mom. I just wanted everyone to get along. I thought you wouldn't mind if they stayed a few weeks. Brianna said you were never home anyway." I sipped my coffee and gave a small, even smile, neither bitter nor too forgiving. You thought that, but you forgot something. Even if I'm not there every day, the house is still in my name. That means only I get to decide who stays and who doesn't. Nathan said nothing. I could see his eyes swinging between guilt and confusion. I pulled an envelope from my pocket and set it on the table, the copy of the deed. Under the light, Dorothy Kane was bold and undeniable. I nudged the envelope toward him. Take a look, so you don't have to hear it secondhand. He glanced at the papers, then looked up. I don't need to see it, Mom, I know. I just stayed quiet. I finished for him. Sometimes silence is a signature, Nathan. I learned that the hard way. He dropped his head. A moment later, he took a wad of cash from his wallet and pushed it toward me. I know I messed up. Take this, Mom. Think of it as rent for now. Or, I laid my hand on the money, then slid it back. No need, Nathan. I have a pension and savings. I don't need anyone's money. He stared, surprised. Maybe for the first time my son realized I wasn't weak or broke like Brianna had told him. In his eyes I caught a flicker of shame mixed with respect. I spoke slowly. You know, Nathan, people often confuse love with control, care with taking someone's rights. You let someone make you believe I only exist if you allow it. But I raised you, and I kept that roof paid for with modest wages. I don't need permission to live. He looked up, lips trembling, but said nothing. I stood, topped off my coffee, and kept my voice light, like I was commenting on the weather. I never planned to fight over that house, but maybe it's time to draw a line. I've met with a lawyer. And tomorrow the agent will come to assess the property. Nathan froze, the cup tilting and spilling a little. You're going to sell the house? I met his eyes, steady. Not going to. I will. I've lived long enough to know when a place only holds contempt, it's not a home. And I won't let it become a battlefield. He clenched his hands and exhaled. Brianna won't understand, Mom. She'll think you're getting revenge. I shrugged. That's her problem, not mine. I'm doing the right thing. The air felt heavy. I looked at my son, grown man's face, Tom's eyes, now tired and conflicted. I loved him, but I wouldn't soften. I set my hand on the table, voice softer but firm. Listen, Nathan, I'm not angry at you, but from now on, everything needs limits. Even love has rules. I won't let anyone, even you, treat me with pity. Respect doesn't come from kindness. It comes from clear boundaries. That closed it. Nathan bowed his head low. He touched the deed lightly, then nodded, almost whispering, I understand, Mom. I smiled, stood, and took the printed agent packet from the cabinet. I set it on the table and flipped to the last page. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Ryan Cole, the agent my friend recommended, will be at the house to do the assessment. If you want, you can be there. But I'll open the door as the legal owner. Nathan looked startled. Maybe for the first time, he realized I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't the weak mother in the kitchen corner. I was a woman who knew the law, held the power, and was ready to act. After a few seconds of silence, he pushed himself up. I'll talk to Brianna. Be careful, Mom. If you need anything, call me. I just nodded, making no promises. When the door closed and his footsteps faded, the apartment felt peaceful. I exhaled, not from exhaustion, but from laying down a weight I'd carried for months. I sat back at the table, opened my journal, and wrote today's first line. Respect doesn't come from pity, it comes from clear boundaries. My hand shook a little, but every letter was sharp. I closed the book and looked at the window, taking on evening gold. The last light washed the far roofs in a burnished glow. In it, I saw my own face, calm, clear, and so new I almost didn't recognize myself. I stood, opened the drawer, and took out the house keys, documents, and file folder. I packed everything carefully, checking each item. Every lock's little click felt like a drumbeat, saying, I was ready. Before switching off the light, I paused at the door and looked back at the small room. Inside was the soft smell of coffee, a half-empty cup, and the gentle quiet I had claimed for myself. I said softly, like a promise to me, tomorrow Dorothy Kane will open that door not as a mother thrown out, but as an owner claiming justice. Then I turned off the light. Outside, Charleston's night fell easy, and inside me, a new dawn began. The next morning, Charleston's sky was unusually clear. I got up early, brewed coffee, smoothed my hair in the mirror, and tucked the files into a brown leather bag. I didn't feel like a mother facing family. I felt like a woman about to close a major deal. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone buzzed Ryan Cole's number. Good morning, Mrs. Kane. I'm at the corner of Magnolia. I'm 5 minutes early. Is this a good time to meet at the gate? I smiled. I'm ready. See you at the door. I drove to the house that used to be my home. The street was quiet, maples starting to turn color, but I felt like I was stepping onto an old stage where the play was about to end. When I parked, Ryan, a tall man around 40 in a neat suit, walked over and shook my hand. His voice was low and clear. You're the owner, correct? I'm Dorothy Kane, I said, pulling out my keys. The legal owner of this house. I slid the key in and turned it. The click sounded crisp, like a statement of authority. The door opened and a mess of perfume, fried food, and cheap cigarette smoke hit me. A once bright house was now damp and cluttered. The sofa was stained with grease, the floor scuffed with footprints, and my family photo on the wall had been replaced by Brianna and Nathan's wedding portrait. Ryan glanced around, jotting notes fast. Looks like a lot of interior changes, ma'am. I nodded, voice even. Not authorized, but I'll address it legally. From the primary bedroom, Brianna's parents stepped out, clearly not ready for this morning's visit. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt. She had a scarf thrown on. Seeing me, they froze, eyes wide like the sheriff had knocked. Mrs. Dorothy, we thought. The man stammered, we thought you had moved. I smiled, voice light as air. No, I just took a few days off, and this is my agent, Ryan Cole. We're here to assess the house I'm considering selling. She forced a smile. His face flushed. Sell? But our daughter is staying temporarily. I cut in, still calm. Temporary doesn't change ownership. I walked slowly into the living room and took in every detail. Familiar things were gone. The bookcase missing, my china mugs replaced by cheap liquor bottles, curtains a different color. In the corner, my cat Daisy was gone. A chill passed through me, but I didn't let it linger. Ryan got to work, measuring, shooting every corner. He spoke in professional, steady rhythms. This area's rising fast, Mrs. Kane. Near the new commercial corridor and the expanded high school. With light interior refresh, you could sell for about 20% more than 3 years ago. I nodded and jotted it down in my notebook. Brianna's mother hovered behind me, restless. I heard her phone buzz in her purse, then saw a message flash. Call Brianna now. She slipped into a corner and whispered into the phone. Honey, I don't know. She's here with a real estate agent. Call Nathan. I kept my face calm, as if I hadn't heard a thing. Ryan walked through the primary bedroom, the one they were using, and stopped. The bed was unmade, sheets wrinkled, closet doors wide open. He turned back and asked quietly, Do you want me to document this condition in the report? Of course, I said. And add another item. Unauthorized changes to the interior layout, damage to the downstairs hardwood, and use of the owner's private area without consent. I pulled out my phone and took a few photos, every detail. The lens caught the two of them edging by the door, faces gone pale. I knew these shots would be attachments in my legal file later. When Ryan finished measuring, we stepped onto the back porch. The garden I once took pride in was overgrown with weeds, the fence broken, and the apple tree Tom planted had been cut down. I bent, picked up a dry splinter from the old stump, the only piece left, and held it tight. Ryan looked at me, voice low. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Kane." I smiled. "No need. Sometimes losing the old is the best way to make room for the new." Back in the living room, Brianna's father was trying to be polite. "Mrs. Kane, maybe this is all a misunderstanding. Our daughter didn't mean I raised a hand and cut him off. I understand exactly what she meant. But there's nothing to debate. I'm here to follow procedure. From now on, any contact about this house goes through my attorney, Mr. Avery Grant. Here's his card." I set a small card on the table. "If you have questions about moving out, Mr. Grant will explain your rights and obligations." They stood there, both scared and confused. I could guess their thoughts that the woman they took for weak had just flipped the board. Ryan double-checked his notes. "At current market prices, I estimate the house could fetch between $680,000 and $720,000. If you'd like, I'll send a draft listing with a timeline this afternoon." I nodded. "Do it. I'm not interested in renting it out. I want to sell clean and final." He smiled and scribbled. "Honestly, your timing is good. Inventory in this neighborhood is tight this quarter. I'm confident you'll get a buyer quickly." I looked around brick by brick, wall by wall, then said softly, like closing a long chapter, "This used to be a home, but now it's an asset. And assets should be priced correctly, not clouded by feelings." Ryan got it and nodded. He shook my hand. "All business. I'll send the file this afternoon with photos and the timeline. Vacate. List. Open house. Close. I also recommend your lawyer send a formal notice within 24 hours. I answered. "Already scheduled. Mr. Grant is expecting me this afternoon." As we left, I could feel tense eyes following from the window. Brianna's mother was on the phone non-stop, probably with her daughter and Nathan. Her voice wavered. "She says she's going to sell. Do something." I stepped down the front stairs, morning sun warm on my shoulder. Ryan opened the car door. I turned back for one last look. The wooden plaque reading Kane Residence still hung there, but the paint was peeling and the letters fading. I thought maybe I should take it down like taking down an old illusion. On the drive back, I called attorney Avery Grant. He'd helped Tom with an insurance matter years ago now in his 60s, but his voice still steady and sure. "I've heard, Dorothy," he said. "Stay calm. I'll draft a 30-day notice to vacate. They have no legal right to be there, so you're fully within the law." I smiled, eyes on the road. "I don't want a circus. I just want it done right. And that's exactly why you'll win," he said. That evening, Ryan emailed the first packet, the draft listing, projected price range, and a 6-week open house plan. His last line read, "This home is worth much more than people think, especially when it belongs to someone who knows her own worth." I finished reading and smiled. At sunset, I sat by my apartment window and opened my journal. Today, they saw me walk in with the legal key and leave with composure. That's the only way to get respect back, not with shouting but with evidence, paperwork, and self-control. I closed the journal and poured a little jasmine tea, the scent filling the room. In the soft light, I noticed my hands weren't trembling like the day they threw my things on the lawn. They were steady, quiet, holding the board. Tomorrow they might panic, argue, justify. I'll just smile. Because now this game has rules, and I'm the one holding them. The next afternoon, I arrived at attorney Avery Grant's office right on time. It's a classic red brick building downtown, tucked in the old historic district. Gold letters on the glass door read, "Avery Grant and Associates, Real Estate and Civil Law." I know places like this well, the smell of paper and ink, that careful atmosphere reminding you every word here carries legal weight. Avery welcomed me into a sunlit room. He was the same silver hair, a deep voice, the calm eyes of someone who's seen hundreds of disputes end with the law on the right side. He motioned for me to sit and opened the file I'd sent the day before. "Dorothy, I've reviewed everything," he said, voice solid as oak. "The deed, property tax, and insurance all in your name. No one has the right to use, allow occupancy, or make structural changes without your consent." I nodded and gripped the teacup his assistant had brought in. "I don't want drama, Avery. I just want it done by the book." He smiled slightly. "That's why I like working with you. Now listen, we'll send a legal 30-day notice to vacate, with clear consequences if they don't comply." He pulled out a template, clean, precise lines of text. Under Section 273710 of the South Carolina Code of Laws, an occupant without ownership or a legal lease must vacate the premises within 30 days of receiving notice. If not, the owner may seek a lawful eviction order and damages. Avery looked up, calm but firm. "We don't need to raise our voices. We'll let the law speak." I looked at the paper and felt relief mixed with resolve. Those black and white lines, lifeless on their own, felt like a backbone. "Not power, but quiet justice," I signed. My signature wasn't shaky like the letter to Nathan. It was clear and steady, a mark of a new resolve. Avery stamped it and called in his assistant. "Angela, serve it today. Make sure we get a signed receipt. We follow protocol." Then he turned to me, warmer now. "Dorothy, I know this isn't just about a house, but you're doing what's right. When the law is enforced, respect finds its way back." I nodded. Maybe he was right. I didn't need them to love me again, just to learn boundaries. Avery went over the steps, meticulous as a good teacher. During this period, if they harass, damage, or push back, don't engage directly. Just document photos, videos, dates, witnesses. I'll take it from there. I wrote it all down. Each note felt like a small brick rebuilding a foundation that once shook. By the time I left, late afternoon light stretched across the cobblestones. I felt lighter not because I'd won anything, but because things were finally in their right places. That night, I got Avery's confirmation email. Notice was personally served to the occupants with signed acknowledgement. Effective today, April 14th. Deadline to vacate, May 14th. He added one line just for me. "We've taken the first step, Dorothy. Let time and the law do the rest." I set my phone down and sat quietly. A sea breeze slipped through the window. I made ginger tea, watched the steam curl up, and remembered the years I believed kindness alone could hold a home together. Now I know, kindness needs limits and proof. 2 days later, I started restructuring my life, literally. First task, lock all utilities back under my name. I called the power company. "Hi, I'm the owner of 214 Magnolia. I want to make sure all utility accounts are under my control." The rep checked and said, "Actually, ma'am, someone changed the contact info last month. Would you like to restore it?" I held back a sigh. "Yes, immediately. Please send confirmation by email." I did the same with water, internet, and gas. Each one noted the date I reactivated ownership. No one touches that house now, not even through a bill. That evening, I got a text from a distant in-law, the sister-in-law in Florida, who hadn't checked on me in 5 years. It read, "Dorothy, family is sacred. Don't push this. They just want stability." I smiled, hit save, and didn't reply. I'm done explaining to people who preach when they've never carried the weight. Next day, I kept going like a COO, taking back her company. I called the bank and asked them to review all authorizations tied to my retirement and credit accounts. The rep asked, polite, "Would you like us to verify anyone with current access?" "Yes," I said. "If you see Nathan Kane, remove him." She came back a moment later, voice firm. "Found an old authorization from 2019. It's been removed as requested. Accounts are now under your name only." I thanked her and leaned back, exhaling. I also added a new property risk policy and updated all contact info. I even installed a video doorbell at the apartment and signed up for monitoring. Some might call it defensive. To me, it's just how you sleep well. That night, I sat at the table and wrote my 30-day plan. The bullet points were neat, but each one carried weight. 1. Dignity. Stay quiet. No sparring. Don't diminish myself. 2. Transparency. Everything in writing, with confirmations. 3. No pointless arguments. My time is worth more than their excuses. 4. Keep calm. The law backs the person who doesn't lose control. 5. Self-care. Eat, sleep, read, exercise. Don't let them take my mind, too. When I finished, I put the pen down. The warm desk light fell across my hands that once shook when I was humiliated, now steady like roots gripping soil. I checked the clock, 10 p.m. Outside, Charleston was unusually quiet. Far-off waves thumped like a lullaby. I turned off the light, got in bed, and pulled up the covers. Peace rolled in with each breath. For the first time in years, I slept deeply. No dreams of the past, no thoughts of Brianna or Nathan, no door slamming in my face, just a long, quiet, solid sleep like I'd finally taken back the right to be in charge of myself. 3 days after the 30-day notice was served, I was watering flowers on the balcony when the doorbell rang. The sound was urgent and familiar, and my heart dipped for a second. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Nathan and Brianna stood there, looked like any young couple, but to me they were two storms pretending calm. Nathan wore a wrinkled shirt, hair messy, eyes a mix of worry and guilt. Brianna was different, fully made up, perfume so strong it drowned out my tea. "Mom," Nathan started, voice small and shaky. "We came to talk. Please give us a few minutes." I quietly opened the door wider and stepped aside. "Come in, but all I have is black coffee and silence." "Pick one." Brianna forced a smile. "Both are fine, Mom." I sat, poured 3 cups, pushed one toward them. The smell of fresh coffee filled the room. The scent that once meant togetherness now tasted bitter. They sat across from me. Nathan spoke first, voice tight. "Mom, we went too far. I didn't think it would end up like this. Brianna was just looking out for her parents. I wanted peace." "Mom, the house is yours, but if you'll come back, we'll move into the small room. Let us take care of you." I stayed quiet, looking him in the eye. The way he said "Mom" trembled, but behind it I heard the old habit of emotional steering. Brianna rested her hand on his arm, bowed her head, and spoke with a hint of tears. "I truly am sorry, Mom. I was wrong. We shouldn't have done that. My parents had nowhere to go. I just wanted to help them. If you come back, I promise no one will touch your room again. I just need a chance to make it right." Her words fell like water, sweet and smooth, but each one carried the same old flavor of manipulation. I said nothing, just listened and let them pour out the rehearsed apologies. Nathan held his wife's hand. They performed the same scene, tears, sorry, shaky voices. When they finished, I set my cup down and looked at them calmly. "Are you done?" Brianna nodded and dabbed her eyes. "Now it's my turn," I said, voice low and clear. "The 30-day notice stands. I'm not changing my decision." Both froze. Nathan looked up, urgent. "Mom, I'm being honest. I don't want you alone. We just want things back the way they were. I gave a thin smile. Back the way they were means what, Nathan? Me in the house but not allowed on the sofa because it might get dirty? Or standing in the yard while someone else eats dinner in the kitchen I built? Brianna cut in. No, I didn't mean that. We'll pay rent, really. Whatever you want, we'll pay. Think of it like you being an investor. I tilted my head, voice light. No need. I don't need rent, because this isn't about income, Brianna. This is about dignity, and you can't pay for dignity. Brianna pressed her lips together. Nathan's eyes searched the room for a foothold. Mom, what about Ethan and Lily? They miss you. They ask about you all the time. Don't you miss them? I took a breath. That hit the softest spot in me, but instead of weakening, I felt stronger. Of course I miss them, but my love for the kids isn't a hostage to bargain with. Don't turn them into cards in this guilt game. Brianna blinked, surprise iced over into cold. She looked at Nathan and said quietly, but loud enough for me to hear, See? I told you. She wants revenge. I didn't react. I simply picked up my phone and turned on the voice recorder. Say whatever you need to say. I just want to save it just in case my memory isn't as good as my kindness. The room froze. Nathan stood, voice heavy. You'll regret this. When people hear how you treat your son and grandkids, they won't take your side. I stayed seated and gave a small smile. You're right about one thing, Nathan. I don't need anyone on my side. I just need to be on the right side. They left, the door shutting hard. I looked out and saw them talking by the entryway. Then Brianna lifted her phone, probably calling someone. An hour later, my phone lit up non-stop, all familiar numbers I hadn't heard in ages. A cousin in Florida, the same one who stayed quiet when Brianna threw me out, suddenly wanted to make peace. Dorothy, don't be stubborn. He's your son. Blood can't be cut off. I answered simply. Blood that stays silent while I'm humiliated is just blood, not a bond. She went quiet, muttered a few empty lines, and hung up. I saved every text, call, threat, and pious advice, each small piece of evidence of manipulation labeled family. That evening I went to Street Helena Church, where there's a Friday group for seniors. I went out of curiosity and left deeply moved. In a small room behind the sanctuary, more than a dozen people sat in a circle. They shared about their lives, their loneliness, and stories that felt personal but turned out eerily similar. A white-haired woman said her son emptied her retirement and left her in a nursing home. A widower said his daughter seized control of his assets and kicked him out. Each story was a scar, and they all shared the name the group leader finally said aloud: emotional elder abuse. Hearing that phrase, I went still. I had thought I was living a private tragedy. Turns out what I went through has a name, a definition, and even laws to protect us. I wasn't alone. A lady named Mabel squeezed my hand and smiled. We're not weak, Dorothy. We've just been quiet too long. On the way home, I walked under warm streetlights, the breeze carrying salt from the sea. I opened my phone and typed a note to myself, the line I knew I'd read every morning. Don't let old pain teach me to stay silent again. I saved it and locked my screen. My steps felt steadier. My back straighter. In the dim light, I saw my shadow no longer curling in fear but walking forward, lighter, like someone who finally understands the worth of one word: dignity. That night I went home, made tea, opened the window, and listened to the waves in the distance. I didn't cry, didn't shake, just felt calm, because I knew, for the first time in years, I was living true to myself, owing no one an apology. Only 7 days left before the move-out notice expires. I marked the date in red in my planner, then gently folded the page. Everything was on track: the house appraised, the attorney on it, and my nights beginning with peaceful sleep instead of tossing and turning. That morning, I was checking my email when the doorbell rang. A light, steady knock, not rushed. I knew it wasn't Brianna. She never knocks like that. I opened the door, and Nathan stood there alone. No perfume, no prepped lines, just my son, looking tired and thinner. His shirt wasn't ironed, eyes sunken, hair messy like he hadn't slept all night. "Mom," he said softly, not pleading like before. "Can I come in?" I nodded and opened the door. The kitchen still held the scent of morning coffee. Nathan glanced around, a little surprised at how bright and neat my apartment was. Everything in order, nothing like the lonely mother image someone had drawn for him. "I want to talk," he began. "Can we sit?" I motioned to the chair across from me. Sunlight from the window fell across the table, splitting the space between us, one side warm light, the other in shade. The divide felt symbolic. Nathan took a long breath. "Mom, I know you've been firm, and I understand why. But I was thinking, if I kick my in-laws out, could you come back home? I'll fix everything. You'll have your own room. I set down my coffee and gently cut in. "For me? Or for the house, Nathan?" He froze. His eyes flickered, then dropped. The silence was answer. Enough. I exhaled, not angry, just sad for a grown son who still didn't know the line between family and possession. "Nathan," I said, soft but steady, "forgiveness is a choice, but it doesn't mean going back to the old spot. I left that house not out of hate, but because I needed air. If I return just to play the role of the indebted one, then forgiveness means nothing." He looked up, lips moving without words. I went on. "I don't want to rebuild with feelings. I want to rebuild with respect. And respect starts by honoring the 30-day notice. I'm not doing this to get even. I'm doing it so you learn the lesson. It took me a lifetime to understand. Love doesn't mean letting people cross your boundaries." Nathan sat still, fingers laced. I could see him wrestling with love and guilt. So I guided the talk out of the conflict zone. "I'm taking a computer skills class at the community center," I said lightly, like sharing a small update. "The ladies in the senior group taught me online finance, how to set up a security camera, and even a bit about phishing emails. It's actually fun. Oh, and I helped one woman apply for assistance." Nathan stared, a little surprised. "You're really doing okay?" I smiled and nodded. "I'm moving on. And moving right." A long, quiet, stretched. Then he said softly, "I'm sorry, Mom. I let it go too far. I was just afraid. If I lost the house, I'd lose you." I shook my head. "You'll never lose me, Nathan. But I want you to understand, real love doesn't need property to exist. It needs kindness and respect." He nodded, tears slipping down, trying not to cry. I kept my calm rhythm. Part of me wanted to get up and hug him like when he was little, but reason held me back. Because I know new boundaries are the real fence of love. I poured more coffee, my voice gentler. "I'm not going back to that house. But I want you to bring the kids here every weekend. There's a little park and a reading nook. I want them to see adults can disagree and still be decent. They don't need to witness conflict." Nathan nodded, choked up. "I'll bring them." "But Mom, can you give me more time? A week or two? Brianna's looking for a place. It's a mess." I met his eyes. Calm. "No, Nathan. Rules are rules. If you want to teach your kids responsibility, start by keeping your word. 30 days means 30 days. After that, if you need help finding a short-term rental, I'll help." But I can't undo what I signed. He was silent for a long time, then slowly nodded. "I understand." I smiled faintly. And that, son, is the first step toward real adulthood. When Nathan left, I walked him to the door. The morning breeze carried sea salt and church bells. I watched him go, and what I felt wasn't pain or anger, it was a solid peace, like ground after a storm. That afternoon, I met Ryan Cole at his brokerage. He had everything ready for the listing phase. "Mrs. Kane, Ryan said, professional and warm. We're set. Just a light clean, photos, and we go live next week. I'm confident the house will get immediate attention. I reviewed the printout's cleaning plan, open house dates, closing timeline. Everything was orderly and clear, no room left for feelings. Good, I said. I want everything transparent. When it's over, I want to look back without regret. Ryan smiled. The way you're handling this, you won't. Most people don't keep their cool like you do. I smiled back, maybe because I spent too many years in noise. Now I choose quiet but principled quiet. He nodded and shook my hand firmly. I'll send the final packet tonight. When I left the office, the sun poured gold over everything. I stopped at a small cafe, ordered jasmine tea, and opened my planner. In the corner, I stuck a blue note with a line in purple ink. Today's principles protect tomorrow's joy. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just a reminder, it was my promise to myself that no matter how life shifts or how tangled family gets, I'll keep that dignity like a compass. That night I came home, turned on the warm lamplight, and cracked the window for the night breeze. The city was quiet. I warmed a cup of milk, sat down, and opened my journal. My son learned his first lesson on boundaries. I learned my last lesson on forgiveness, and both of us are growing up even if we're long past being called young. I closed the book and smiled. Outside, church bells rolled low, and even like the heartbeat of someone who's weathered a storm and finally knows peace is a fair reward for those who keep their principles. On the 30th day, they moved out. No tears, no apologies, just the rattle of a moving truck on a damp morning. I stood at the curb, file folder in hand, watching the last boxes load. Nathan avoided my eyes. Brianna pretended to be busy on her phone. When the truck door slammed, they slipped away from Magnolia Street, the place that once held my youth. I didn't follow and didn't look back. I simply smiled and placed the keys in Ryan Cole's hand beside me. Your turn, I said. Ryan nodded, walked to the lawn, and drove a fresh sign into the grass. For sale, Ryan Cole Realty. The metal cutting into soil sounded crisp, like a period. Charleston's sky was strangely clear that day. Sunlight washed the rooflines and windows that had seen so many dinners, so many fights, so many broken promises. I watched, feeling both light and far away, as if burying a piece of the past, the only way to revive the rest of me. Ryan turned, upbeat. You'll be surprised. This area is hot. You'll get interest this week. He was right. 2 days later, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Emails with questions, a young couple wanting a showing. And by the first weekend, Ryan called, excitement in his voice. Dorothy, we've got a cash offer. $720,000, right on my estimate. I went silent for a few seconds. Not for the number, but because cash sounded like freedom knocking. The next day, I met attorney Avery Grant. He'd received the contract. As usual, Avery didn't rush. He slid on his glasses, read every clause, drew a red line through a few spots, then looked up. This is their add-on, a trap clause. If you sign without catching it, they can delay payment with fake repair demands. I'll strike it. He edited steadily, like someone used to facing dishonesty without flinching. I smiled. Avery, without you, I'm not sure I'd have the patience to finish this. He set his hand on the papers. It's your patience that makes the law work. You chose the right path, no shouting, just doing it right. When I signed, my hand shook a little, years of scrubbing bricks and tending roses compressed into one signature. But as the ink dried, I smiled. Not like someone who lost, but like someone who finally closed an old era. After the wire hit, I took 3 days to reset everything. I paid off the small stuff. Credit card, car insurance, a few hospital charges from last year. Clearing those debts felt odd, like lifting invisible straps from my chest. Then I set up an emergency fund in a 3-month CD. With Avery's help, I put the rest in a safe mix: bonds, CDs, and a small slice in a social fund. Not a fortune, but enough to live free without sweating every bill. One early morning I looked in the mirror. More gray, more lines. But my eyes were bright in a new way. I decided to treat myself to the beach trip I'd put off for family. I picked Tybee Island, a few hours' drive from Charleston. A small oceanfront room, windows full of wind and waves. The first day, I walked barefoot along the shore and let the water wash over my ankles. Each wave felt like a rinse cycle, old memories thinned out, old hurts fading under the tide. At night, I sat on the balcony, listening to surf mix with jazz from a nearby bar. I wrote in my journal, "I didn't lose a home. I traded for peace." 3 days on Tybee felt like a healing regimen. Late breakfasts. Reading on the porch. Unhurried sunsets. No one asking what I needed. No one telling me how to be. Just me and the right to be quiet in freedom. Back home, I decided to refresh the apartment that had witnessed my rebirth. I changed all the curtains to a soft cream, painted the walls a gentle olive, and added a few snake plants in the corners. Each morning, sunlight slid through gauze, touching my coffee and an open book. I set a small armchair by the window, Dorothy's reading corner. I changed the bedding, hung a few sunflower prints, the flower I've loved since I was young but never bought because Tom didn't like bright colors. No one stops me now. I live alone, and the apartment started breathing with me. One afternoon over jasmine tea, an idea landed. I'd start a social account not to show off, but to share what brings joy to people my age. My first post was a teacup, a copy of The Shell Seekers, and a simple caption, "Older age isn't the last page, it's a new chapter if you hold the pen." I didn't expect a few hundred likes in days. Many peers commented, "I'm learning to live again. I thought I was the only one lonely." I replied to each, slowly, honestly. That account became a small corner for people wanting to be heard and to hear. I shared easy meals for one, good reads, sometimes a story about pride and forgiveness. New friends appeared not by blood, but by empathy. One day, Ryan messaged, "I saw you online. You're inspiring more people than you realize." I smiled and wrote back, "I'm just rewriting my life this time in the voice of a free woman." The next month, I signed up to volunteer through church, helping seniors abandoned or scammed out of assets. I visited an 82-year-old named Lucille, living alone after her daughter drained her savings. She squeezed my hand, eyes wet. "You know, you're only truly old when no one listens to you anymore." That line stopped me cold. I held her hand tighter and said, "Then I'll listen, and we won't be silent anymore." Leaving the nursing home, the gray sky felt like a warm hand on my shoulder. I understood, giving is the quickest way to heal. That night, I added another page to my journal. I sold the house but bought back my freedom. I lost the old road and found the right direction. And I learned real happiness begins with the right to say no, closed the book, and turned off the light. The sea breeze slipped through the open window, carrying the gentle salt of freedom, the scent I'd once forgotten, now fully mine in the second life I chose. One June morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains, and a gentle knock sounded at my door. My heart tilted not from fear, but from a sense that an old cycle was closing in a new way. I opened it. Nathan stood there, hands resting on Ethan and Lily's shoulders. "We came to see you," he said, cautious and soft. I looked at the kids. They pressed close to their dad, eyes shy and bright. The last time I'd seen them was before everything fell apart. "Hi, Grandma," Lily whispered, like a breeze. I bent down and hugged them both. It was different this time, not squeezed tight or teary, just warm enough to say, "I'm still here, but I'm a new kind of grandma." Nathan awkwardly glanced around the apartment. Everything neat and bright, jasmine tea in the air, and a touch of fresh paint, a fruit basket on the table, a few books I was reading, green plants thriving in the corner. "It's beautiful, Mom," he said. "This place really suits you." I smiled. "Thank you. Wherever you feel at peace, that's home." The kids darted around and found the cookie tray I'd set out. Ethan yelled, "Grandma, can I have one?" I nodded, pointing at the clock. "Yes, but remember the rule. Clean your plate and wash your hands after." They stared at each other, surprised that new Grandma had rules. When Lily dropped crumbs on the rug, I simply said, "Grab a cloth for me, sweetheart. A clean home makes everyone happy." Ethan bent down without arguing. A moment later, Lily mumbled, "Grandma, you're different." I smiled, easy as breath. "Different is good, isn't it? Grown-ups have to learn to live true to themselves." They nodded and went back to their puzzle. I watched them. My heart warm, but unlike before, this love wasn't tangled with fear of being used or dismissed. It had boundaries, order, and clarity. Nathan sat quietly, then said, "Mom, I don't know what to say. It feels strange seeing you this calm." I turned to him, steady. "Strange because you're used to me enduring, right? But sometimes calm doesn't come from forgiving others. It comes from no longer letting them define your value." He lowered his head. "I get it. I'm trying to relearn how to be a dad. I want the kids to have their grandma, no matter what's going on with the adults." I nodded gently. "Start with respect. If you want, you can walk with me, not over me. We all have to relearn love, Nathan. Love without control." His eyes watered. "Brianna isn't coming, Mom. She finds it hard to face you. But I'll bring the kids regularly, if you'll have us." I set my hand on his shoulder and smiled. "Everyone is responsible for their choices. I don't need apologies to be at peace. I just want you to keep your word for the kids." A month later, I hosted a small birthday tea at my apartment. Nothing grand, just a few new friends. Mabel from the group, Stephen who runs the volunteer program at the nursing home, the downstairs neighbor who bakes almond cookies, and of course, Mrs. Patel, the former neighbor who witnessed the morning they threw me out. On the table sat a simple cake with the words, "To life and new chapters." Lily and Ethan helped me place the candles, while Nathan leaned against the doorframe, watching it all with eyes he couldn't keep from shining. "You look different, Mom," he said softly as I walked over. I smiled. "Different or truer?" He answered, voice thick, "Both." Throughout the little party, I didn't have to hide anything. I laughed freely, told stories, and shared a few dishes I'd learned in a cooking class. When I spoke about the project to support abandoned seniors, Mabel burst into tears and squeezed my hand. "Dorothy, you walked through pain and brought light back to us." I just answered quietly, "No, I only brought what I once needed, a steady hand, a little faith." When I blew out the candles, the room filled with applause. Nathan stood still, watching me, maybe for the first time in his life, seeing his mother as herself, not as a shadow at the edge of someone else's story. His eyes held no pity or guilt anymore, but recognition. The following week, the church group invited me to share my journey at our Share and Listen meeting. When I stepped up, the room was so quiet you could hear papers tremble in my hand. I spoke slowly, not like an accuser, but like someone who'd walked through the storm and learned to name each wind. I told them about the morning I was thrown out, the sloppy note, the path to reclaim my right to stand in my own home. I talked about Attorney Avery, about Ryan, about the seniors group at church, and about how I began again from the basics, respecting myself. When I finished, many wiped their eyes. An older woman whispered, "I thought only I was belittled by my children. Now I see I'm not alone." I smiled, warmth spreading through my chest. No speech is needed. Sometimes a story told at the right moment is enough to help someone begin again. I invited Mrs. Patel to speak. She walked up calmly, voice as gentle as ever. "I don't need to say much. I just want to say I was there the day Dorothy was forced out." She didn't cry. She simply smiled and walked through the gate. And today, she's smiling again, but it's the smile of someone who won. The room applauded. I bowed in thanks, tears slipping free, but no longer heavy tears allowed to fall, not from hurt, but from pride. That night, Nathan stayed to help me clean up. When everyone had left, the two of us sat on the balcony, night breeze stirring our hair. "Mom," he said, "I don't know how to thank you. I used to think love meant protecting, handling everything for others. Now I understand love also means knowing when to step back." I squeezed his hand, my voice gentle but firm, and I learned the opposite. Love is not endurance, not bowing just to keep the peace. I'm willing to love, but not at the cost of dignity. Nathan was quiet, but I saw something change in his eyes. Maturity. Maybe it takes a lifetime for a mother and son to understand that love is whole only when both stand upright, not when one is on their knees. I looked out where city lights shimmered on the Ashley River like stars. In my heart, I knew I'd reached the end of the road of pain and stepped into a new stretch of freedom, clear-eyed love, and well-earned peace. 2 years have passed since the day I closed the door on the old house. When time slows, it heals in its own way, not by erasing, but by teaching us to look back with calm. Now my life moves at a steady, full rhythm. Mondays and Thursdays I volunteer at the nursing home where men and women with stories like mine now tell them with a smile. Wednesdays I teach a computer skills class for seniors, showing them how to send emails, save photos, and video call their grandkids without help. On weekends, I meet for coffee with my circle of friends, Mabel, Stephen, and Mrs. Patel, who still loves brewing cinnamon tea and telling stories of the old neighborhood. My small apartment has become a true home. The walls hold photos from my trips, Tybie's endless blue, a lavender field in Tennessee, and the park corner where Ethan once laughed himself silly at a cookie-stealing squirrel. I don't need relics of the past anymore, just small moments I'm living now. Nathan and I stay in touch, measured, healthy, no more strings tied with guilt or pity. Once a month, he brings the kids to visit. Ethan now says thank you after every meal, and Lily loves sitting beside me to look through old photos. They're old enough to understand that Grandma's love isn't bought by silence. Brianna never appears. I don't ask, and I don't resent it. Some people are stretches of road, not destiny. Everyone is responsible for their choices, and I've chosen to keep living without needing anyone to admit fault. One early autumn afternoon, I sat reviewing the financial statement Avery helps me manage. The money from the old house rests safely in conservative funds, some invested, some set aside for emergencies. I have enough to live comfortably, travel each year, buy gifts for the kids, and help a few friends when times are hard. I realized the sale money brings stability, but true happiness comes from the right to choosing where to live, when to be silent or speak up, whom to love or to leave. I wrote a letter to myself, the woman who once stood shaking in front of a house taken from her. Dorothy of yesterday, never let anyone dim the light in your eyes again. Don't give so much that you forget yourself. Remember, kindness only matters when paired with boundaries. That day when your daughter-in-law said, "Don't stand there, the neighbors are watching," you chose to stand still and keep quiet. Now you know, that wasn't weakness, it was the beginning of strength. I folded the letter and placed it in a small wooden box with a photo of me and Marisol by the ocean. A keepsake, a reminder, Never bow to contempt no matter who it comes from. I also started a small fund called Silver Voices Fund to support seniors facing emotional abuse within their families. At first it was just a few $100s I'd saved, then others from the volunteer group added theirs. We help print legal documents, find temporary housing, or simply listen to stories their children won't hear anymore. Each time an older woman grips my hand and says, "Thank you for reminding me I still have a voice," I feel my path has been worth it. One breezy afternoon with wind off the Ashley River, I decided to visit my old street. The house has fresh paint, a new plaque on the door reading, "The Harpers." The front yard still has roses, but they grow wild now, not in my neat rows. I stood at a distance and didn't go in, I didn't need to. No pain rose up. It was like looking at a faded photograph. I smiled and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to leave at the right time." I knew clearly, my silence that day wasn't surrender. It was stepping back to gather strength to counter with reason, not tears. Silence was the beginning of victory. And without that morning of being cast out of my own home, I might never have learned that a 68-year-old woman can start over strong, independent, and at peace. That evening when I got home, I opened my laptop and wrote a new post for Silver Voices. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose to leave in silence, not to prove anything, but to protect your worth. If you're living in a home that makes you shrink a little each day, know there is a way out, a voice, and someone who's stood where you are. I hit post and watched the screen glow. Dozens of comments poured in. "I'm in Texas, your story is mine." "Watching from Florida, thank you for saying what I haven't dared to say." I read each one, eyes stinging. Maybe my journey was never only prize, mine. I closed the laptop and went to latch the window. Sunset slipped through the curtains, spreading across the floor in warm, honeyed light. I brewed a cup of mint tea, inhaled deeply, and felt the wind move through hair streaked with silver. Outside, the city was still noisy, but inside this little home, peace stayed. I thought, maybe someone listening to this is standing at the start of the same road where pain is fresh but hope is flickering. I hope that by the time they hear this, they know. It's never too late to rise, to love yourself again, to choose dignity over fear. Thank you for staying with me to the very last lines. I don't know where you're listening from, a small room, a quiet evening, or on your way home. But if this story made you pause, if your heart twinged because you saw yourself in these words, know you are not alone. Sometimes we have to be silent to guard our dignity, to learn how to stand on our own feet. I've been there. And I believe you can too. If my story touched you, tell me where you're listening from, and what you would do in my place. Leave a comment. Your words might be the strength someone needs to find their voice. And if you want to keep walking together, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so we don't lose each other in the noise of the world. Thank you. Truly. Peace often begins the moment we dare to believe we still deserve happiness.
Right in the middle of a crowded conference room, I heard my son's father-in-law, Randall Pierce, shout straight into his face, "This kid can't even hold a damn mop the right way. Useless. Absolutely useless." People burst out laughing. I froze at the doorway, staring at my son, Noah, kneeling on the floor, his hands trembling as he wiped up the coffee Randall had deliberately tossed just to teach him a lesson. Noah saw me. His face flushed a deep, painful red. I wanted to run in and pull him away, but I stayed still. And in those few seconds, I understood. If I reacted now, they would crush him even further. So I swallowed my anger and turned away. And in that very moment, I decided I would make them pay for what they did. But in a way they would never see coming. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I walked out of the Pierce Manufacturing Building, my hands clenched so tightly the knuckles turned white. The North Carolina air that day was colder than usual for December, but the chill of the wind was nothing compared to the cold running down my spine after watching my son treated like cheap labor in front of a room full of people. I, Margaret Maggie Turner, 66 years old, never imagined I would have to see Noah in such a state, especially after the years I spent pouring every ounce of strength I had into raising and protecting him. I remembered standing there, watching my only son in that wide conference room, the walls lined with oversized posters about the company's vision and mission. Ironically, beneath those shiny slogans, my son was kneeling on the floor like an untrained janitor, scrubbing spilled coffee. I already knew Noah hadn't been given the management position he was originally promised, but I never expected they would treat him this horribly. I can still see the moment Noah's eyes met mine by accident. The hurt in them pierced straight through my chest. I'd seen him fall off his bike, seen him get injured, seen him cry over his first heartbreak. But never had I seen humiliation in his eyes this deep. It was as if he was silently saying, "Mom, I'm sorry you have to see me like this." I wanted to tell him he had nothing to apologize for, that the only wrongdoers were the people trampling him to feed their own swollen egos. But I couldn't do anything from the hallway. Any reaction from me would give Randall another excuse to shame Noah. So I turned my back and walked away. But I swear, that was the last time in my life I would ever walk away from my son in a moment like that. When I got home, I opened the lunch I had brought for Noah, a box of Southern-style barbecue rice, the family recipe he'd loved since he was little. I thought it would make his first day a little easier. I had woken up at 6 a.m., prepared everything with care. I wanted him to have a real lunch, not some rushed fast food at the office. I had imagined him walking into Randall's company with confidence, being respected, being recognized for who he was. But what I saw was the opposite of everything I had hoped. I set the lunchbox on the kitchen counter and sat there for a long time. My house in Raleigh had always felt warm, filled with the scent of old wood and family photos lining the walls. But that day, the whole place felt dark. I could hear my heartbeat, slow, angry, heavy. At 66, I lived alone, used to the silence of a house no longer filled with the footsteps of a little boy running around. But today, the silence roared like a scream. I thought about all the years I raised Noah on my own. My husband left when Noah was 4. I worked 3 jobs, waitressing at a diner, cleaning hotel rooms, and doing temp work in a warehouse just to provide for him. I used to come home close to midnight, hands numb, back aching so badly I cried. But the moment I saw Noah asleep, hugging his worn-out teddy bear, everything felt worth it. Noah never disappointed me. He was hard-working, gentle, polite, always saying please and thank you to everyone he met. When he got into the University of North Carolina, I cried in the middle of the campus because I was so proud, and now those people dared call my son useless. No, I would not accept that. That evening, I called Noah again and again, but he didn't answer. I guessed he was embarrassed, or worse, blaming himself. I knew my son better than anyone. Noah always endured first, stayed silent second, and fell apart last. I'd seen it during his first divorce 6 years ago, and now it was happening again. I paced around the house like a wounded lioness. I opened a kitchen drawer and pulled out a small notebook, the blue one with worn edges. I wrote, December 12th, Randall Pierce publicly humiliated Noah in front of the staff, deliberately spilled coffee to make him kneel and clean the floor. I didn't know what made me do it. Maybe instinct, maybe the experience of a single mother who'd seen too much bitterness in life. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't just an incident. It was a warning, a sign that my son was being pulled into something dangerous. And if I didn't document everything, I wouldn't be able to protect him. I barely slept that night. The scene at the company played over and over in my mind. The laughter, Noah's terrified eyes, Randall's shouting. But the image that haunted me most was Olivia, standing a few feet away, arms crossed, her face cold and blank, pretending she didn't know the man being humiliated in front of her. I once thought Olivia was simply a little spoiled from growing up wealthy. I told myself differences in social status didn't matter if two people loved each other. But now I had to face the truth. Olivia did not love Noah the way a wife should. She loved control. She loved power, especially the power that came from having a husband who depended on her family. I saw it clearly in the way she stood there, arms folded, not moving an inch to defend him. Near dawn, I sat at the dining table and opened the notebook again. I wrote, "No one has the right to turn Noah into a joke. No one." And beneath that, they think Noah will stay silent. They think I'm old, weak, and powerless. They're wrong. I closed the notebook and exhaled slowly. Life had taught me one thing. The people who seem untouchable are often the easiest to topple, as long as you hit them at the right time, in the right way. Randall and his family looked perfect. Money, power, reputation. But I'd lived long enough to know the shinier the surface, the deeper the cracks underneath. I didn't yet know the full truth. But I knew one thing for sure. They were about to face a storm, one I would create myself. I remember clearly the day Noah first brought Olivia home, a day when I sensed something was off but couldn't put it into words. It was mid-autumn in North Carolina. The driveway was covered in golden leaves like a warm welcome mat. Noah called a few hours before, sounding excited like a man in love, even though he was already over 30. I remember the knock on the door. When I opened it, Olivia stood beside Noah, undeniably beautiful, the kind of beauty that comes from growing up wealthy. Golden hair and soft waves, a beige designer coat, elegant heels, and gray-blue eyes so cold they made you step back a little. She smiled, but the smile never reached her eyes. I greeted her warmly, but a faint uneasiness lingered in my chest. The evening went smoothly, too smoothly. Olivia spoke softly, politely, talking about her work, her family, her goals. But I caught the way she looked at Noah sometimes, analytical, appraising. It bothered me. It was the look of someone examining a project that needed improvement, not a partner she cherished. And Noah, he was trying too hard, too careful with his words, too eager for her approval, too unlike himself. I saw it because I'm his mother. Meeting Randall for the first time happened sooner than I expected. Noah took me to his house, a mansion so large I needed a moment to find the main entrance. Randall greeted me the way a man greets someone he doesn't consider his equal. His handshake was cold, stiff, purely procedural. He looked at my simple cardigan, then at his wife's designer dress. The comparison was obvious. Dinner that night was a string of half-polite, half-patronizing comments. Randall questioned Noah's education, career, income, not to learn, but to highlight Noah's lack. He said Olivia deserved a truly strong man and watched Noah's reaction like it amused him. Noah swallowed hard over and over, trying not to show hurt. I remembered every word. Randall's arrogance wasn't just aimed at me. He looked down on Noah, too. I left that house knowing one thing. If Noah married into this family, he would lose himself. And I was right. Months into dating, Olivia began shaping Noah quietly, not by orders, but by suggestions disguised as care. You should wear suits more. You need to work out so you look confident. You should speak more like business leaders. You have to learn a more professional communication style. Each time Noah tried to comply, he changed the way he talked, the way he dressed, the way he held himself, and he began losing sleep. First occasionally, then constantly. I warned him, told him love wasn't supposed to be an endurance test, but Noah believed the best in people. He believed Olivia loved him. He believed the Pierces just needed time to warm up. I'd lived long enough to know better. Their wedding was extravagant and cold, beautiful like a magazine spread, frozen like marble. I had no part in the decisions. I was simply told where to sit. After the wedding, the Pierces never invited me to dinner, not even once. Noah thought they were busy. I understood the truth. He was theirs now, and I was irrelevant. Then came the financial control. The shared account Olivia managed, the spending restrictions Noah had to discuss with her, and the documents he was pressured to sign for family restructuring. That night, I wrote everything down, every odd detail, every red flag, and I knew something was very wrong. Evil never shows up suddenly. It grows roots, and the roots in the Pierce family were poisonous. What I didn't know then was that Randall was hiding the biggest truth of all. Pierce Manufacturing was on the brink of collapse, and I was about to discover it, in a way none of them expected. In Noah's first week, Randall assigned him the worst tasks under the guise of training. Moving heavy boxes, pushing carts, running errands on foot between distant buildings. Noah even got injured one afternoon. When I asked if Randall knew, Noah said, "This is how I learn what pressure feels like at the lower levels." A cold shiver ran through me. That's not training, Noah. That's humiliation. But my son only stayed silent. Not long after that, Randall said something to Noah that I will never forget. One evening, while Noah was having dinner with the Pierce family, Randall leaned back in his chair, raised his wine glass, and said with absolute certainty, "If you want to be a son-in-law of this family, you need to know your place." I wasn't there, but Noah told me later when he accidentally let it slip. I asked him what that place was. Noah didn't answer. That silence said everything. I could picture Noah sitting there at a dinner table surrounded by wealthy people, listening to Randall say that with a casual, almost bored tone. I knew my son. He's not the type to get angry easily. He would simply lower his head because he never wants to cause trouble. But people like Randall see that kindness and exploit it. At the company, things grew even worse. It wasn't just Randall who looked down on Noah. Other colleagues began treating him like a servant rather than someone being trained for a management position. Noah told me that every time he walked down the hallway, they whispered, "That's Randall's doorman. That's the precious son-in-law. He only got this job because he married the boss's daughter." Even though Noah tried to recount it jokingly, I still heard the hurt hidden inside every word. I once told Noah, "You don't have to tolerate people who look down on you," but he only gave me that faint smile, the kind you use when you're trying not to collapse. What hurt me most was Olivia, the woman Noah trusted, taking her family's side. Every time Noah complained even a little about what Randall did, Olivia would say in that condescending tone, "You need to be stronger." Men should handle pressure. My dad just wants you to grow up. She called those humiliations lessons for becoming a real man. I wanted to ask her, grow up by kneeling on the floor? Grow up by being called useless in front of employees? But Noah didn't want me confronting Olivia. He said I didn't understand their perspective. He was right. I didn't understand how a wife could calmly watch her husband get trampled. Then one winter night, Noah came to my house in a state I will never forget. It was freezing outside, and Noah stood at my doorway with his coat hanging open, smelling strongly of alcohol. I had never seen my son that drunk. When I helped him into a chair, he burst into tears. Tears like a child's. "Mom, I can't take it anymore. I wish I could disappear." I froze. Noah had never said anything like that in his life. I grabbed his hand, feeling how cold his fingertips were. "Noah, look at me." But he didn't. He only shook his head, tears falling onto my hand, hot and desperate. Noah said he always felt inadequate, that every day at the company was another day he feared hearing those mocking comments, feared making a mistake, feared Randall humiliating him again in front of everyone. He said Olivia told him he was too sensitive, that he needed to grow up. I sat beside my son the entire night, listening to him spill out, through the haze of alcohol, how every day felt like he was being swallowed whole. After that night, I started watching his life closely. I didn't ask aggressively. I didn't pry. I just observed, the way any mother does when she senses something is deeply wrong. And then, one clue after another began to appear. Noah said Randall often handed him documents he needed to review, but whenever Noah brought them to upper management, they looked confused and told him, "You don't have the authority to see these." As if Randall was purposely steering Noah toward dangerous territory, I realized something. Randall didn't want Noah to grow stronger. He wanted Noah to become a liability, a sacrificial lamb. Then one day, Noah said Randall told him to sign off on an inventory report to complete the file, even though Noah didn't work in that department. Noah refused, and Randall shouted right in his face, "You're part of this family. Just sign it." When I heard that, a chill ran down my spine. Randall was steering everything toward one direction. Noah would be the one blamed if the company got into trouble. I wrote in my blue notebook, "Randall is constructing a scapegoat." Every line I wrote made the fear inside me grow heavier. Noah became more and more exhausted. He began working from home on weekends because he was burned out. When I saw his thin face on FaceTime, I saw the unmistakable signs of despair. But Noah still tried to hide everything, still told me everything was fine, still defended Olivia. I knew my son was sliding down a steep hill, one he couldn't stop on his own, and I, the mother who carried him through every storm of his childhood, could no longer stay still. I swore I would not let them make Noah the fall guy for the Pierce family's sins. I had once fought to keep my child alive through poverty. Now I had to fight again, not against hunger, but against the power of those who looked down on him. That night, while Noah slept on my sofa, completely drained, I stood by the kitchen door, watching the snow fall in the yard. And I felt a different kind of cold, the cold of truth taking shape. I had written down enough in my little notebook, enough to know that what Noah suffered wasn't random, enough to know Randall didn't see Noah as a son-in-law. He saw him as a tool. I closed the notebook, resting my hand on the cover as if sealing a vow. I would not let Randall destroy my child. And the very next morning, I decided it was time to uncover the real condition of Pierce Manufacturing and what they were hiding. I started digging into Pierce Manufacturing on a cold afternoon, right after Noah left my house following a dinner he could barely eat before saying he had to go prepare documents for Randall. I watched him walk out the door, shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. I knew he was almost at his breaking point, and if I didn't act soon, everything would spiral out of control. I didn't know much about big company finance, but I knew I needed someone who could dig into what ordinary people couldn't see. So I called Henry Whitman, an old friend, once a contract attorney in Charlotte. We met years ago when I worked part-time cleaning the law office where he had just started his career. Henry was always direct, discreet, and especially grateful for a small favor I once did for him long ago. When he heard me ask him to investigate Pierce Manufacturing, he stayed silent for a few seconds before saying, "Maggie, are you sure? That's a big corporation, not some small business. I don't care how big it is, I just need to know what they're doing to my son." My voice was calm, but the fury beneath it made Henry stop questioning me. He simply said he would start immediately. A week later, Henry called and asked me to meet him at his office on Sunday afternoon. When I arrived, he was standing near the window, a thick stack of documents on the table. His face was unusually serious enough for me to sense that whatever he was about to say would change everything. "Maggie," he began, "I dug deep, and what I found, no one knows about." I sat down, hands clasped together. "Tell me, Henry." He opened the file and pushed it toward me. The pages were filled with numbers that made my head spin, but Henry summarized it in one sentence. "Pierce Manufacturing is drowning in debt and covering it up with extremely risky accounting tactics." I stared at him, mind blank. Henry continued, "They're being sued by at least 7 companies for breach of contract. They lost 3 major distribution deals. Part of their supply chain has collapsed. A factory in Tennessee shut down completely. And most importantly, Randall has been manipulating the books to hide more than $14 million in losses." It took me a moment to fully grasp what he said. $14 million. Enough to sink a corporation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "And what does Noah have to do with this?" Henry tightened his grip on his pen. "Randall is setting up a fall guy, and Noah, with his vague job title, unclear authority, and being new, is the perfect candidate." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. "He wants to make my son take the blame?" Henry nodded slowly. "That's what I believe. If the company gets investigated or collapses, Noah will be portrayed as the incompetent signer, the one who approved things he didn't understand. And Randall, he'll stand behind the curtain, untouched." I couldn't speak for several minutes. It felt like someone was crushing my ribs. I feared Randall treated Noah poorly, but I never imagined he was wicked enough to sacrifice my son's future to save himself. "When did Olivia know about this?" I asked. Henry looked at me with sympathy. "She knew. She knew very well. Maggie. Olivia isn't naive. She moves in her father's wealthy social circles. They talk. She knew the company's financial state long ago." A hollow feeling opened inside my chest. "And Noah?" "I am certain he has no idea. If he knew, he wouldn't be able to function." I shook my head, not to deny it, but to keep from crying. And Olivia still stayed silent, letting Noah carry the risk for them. Henry nodded. "They're protecting the family name. If their financial disaster comes out, they need a face. Someone young, inexperienced, unprepared, to take the fall." I closed my eyes. Every word Henry said cut like a blade. From beginning to end, Noah wasn't a son-in-law. He was a living shield for a powerful, ruthless family. After that meeting, I went home and sat by the window for a long time. I looked out at the small garden where Noah used to play when he was little, chasing butterflies, laughing loud enough to wake the neighbors. I remembered every moment I'd worked myself to exhaustion to give him the life he deserved. And now, all he received from his wife's family was contempt and a scheme to turn him into their scapegoat. I knew that if I didn't act, Noah would lose everything: his reputation, his future, even the last pieces of his self-worth. I opened my blue notebook and wrote one more line: not just saving Noah, tearing down what dragged him to his knees. In that moment, my anger solidified into something fiercer, a pillar, a vow. I decided to do something no one would expect a 66-year-old woman to do. I began building a shell company. I named it Turner Strategic Holdings, something that sounded like a rising investment firm, serious enough and unfamiliar enough to avoid suspicion. I opened a business account, hired an independent accountant, and used my life savings, plus the money from selling an old family house in Virginia, to establish its initial capital. No one knew, not even Noah, and I began to learn. Yes, at 66, I sat in front of a computer taking courses on corporate finance, risk management, and acquisition strategies. I called old friends who once worked in banking. I read about shareholder structures, asset valuation, and negotiation tactics for taking over companies. At first, it felt like wandering through a dense forest of unfamiliar terms, but I remembered the years when I worked 3 jobs just to raise Noah. There was nothing I couldn't do once I decided to. I didn't just want to save Noah. I wanted to destroy the thing that made him kneel on that floor. In the following weeks, I gathered more evidence of Randall's misconduct, from Noah's stories, from Henry's documents, from industry rumors Henry heard. The deeper I dug, the clearer the truth became. Randall Pierce wasn't a businessman. He was a panicked man hiding behind reputation, a man willing to sacrifice anyone, even his own son-in-law, to protect his illusion of power. And if I didn't stop him, Noah would be the first casualty. One evening, while I was reviewing Henry's latest notes, he called me. His voice was lower and slower than usual. "Maggie, I need to say something, and you need to listen carefully." I gripped the phone. "Go ahead, Henry." There was a pause. Then he said a sentence that snapped everything into focus. A sentence I will remember for the rest of my life. "Maggie, if you want to save Noah, you have to defeat Randall in the only place he cares about, his company." I froze. Henry continued. "That's his battlefield, and that's the only place he can be brought down." I rested my hand on the blue notebook and stared at my reflection in the glass. I knew, I understood, and I was ready. My fight for Noah began that very moment. If you're listening to this and felt your chest tighten at the thought of a mother watching her child turned into a shield for another's greed, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, or leave even a single line so I know we're walking through this together. From the day Henry said that to save Noah, I had to defeat Randall where he was strongest. I lived with a constant wire pulled tight between determination and fear. I kept a calm face around Noah, but every time I saw him, a deep ache bloomed inside me. My son grew thinner by the week, while Olivia grew more unmasked. Noah started coming to my house more often, not to confide, but because he didn't want to stay home with Olivia. Whenever I saw him standing at my doorway, tired and drained, I knew something else had happened. Olivia no longer hid her contempt. She insulted Noah openly. not just at home, but in front of friends and relatives. One evening, Noah told me that during a dinner with their social circle, Olivia said in front of everyone, "Do you know why my dad is disappointed in you? Because you have no ambition. You're nothing like successful men." She finished speaking. A few people scoffed, and Noah stayed quiet as if her words were simply the truth. I asked him what he did at that moment. Noah just shrugged. "I'm used to it, Mom." Those two words sent a chill down my spine. Day by day, I watched Noah being pushed to the bottom of his own self-worth. He no longer looked people in the eye when speaking. His shoulders were always slumped. His eyes constantly searched for faults in himself. I recognized those signs. I had seen them in women who suffered emotional abuse back in the church group years ago. People who are suppressed long enough eventually stop believing they deserve respect. I feared that one day Noah would reach that point too, and then the thing I feared most happened. It was a rainy night. I was reviewing some of Henry's notes when I heard loud, urgent knocking at the door. I opened it and saw Noah standing there, soaked through, breathless, his eyes red like someone had torn his heart out. I pulled him inside immediately. "Noah, what happened?" He was trembling as he removed his wet coat, and for a few seconds I thought he wouldn't be able to speak at all. Then he took a deep breath, his voice cracking. "She kicked me out, Mom." I froze. Olivia had done many cruel things, but kicking her husband out into the cold rain, that was cruelty beyond imagination. "Why?" I asked. Noah let out a bitter laugh. Olivia said, "I'm not qualified to be her husband." It felt like someone grabbed my heart and squeezed hard. Noah sank into the chair, burying his head in his hands. Rainwater dripped from his hair onto the carpet, blending with his tears. "Mom." I tried. I tried everything Olivia and her father wanted. I changed myself, I endured, I stayed quiet, but I'm just not enough for them. He looked up. That look, the look of someone worn down to the core, forced me to turn away so I wouldn't cry. I sat beside him and placed my hand on his back, feeling each shaky breath. "Noah, you're not wrong. You're not useless. You're not inadequate. You're just surrounded by people who don't recognize your worth." But Noah only shook his head. "I'm tired, Mom. I don't even recognize myself anymore." When he said that, I knew. This marriage had shattered long ago. Noah just hadn't found the courage to let go. I made him a cup of hot tea and set it in front of him. He held the cup with both hands, as if trying to absorb enough warmth to keep from falling apart completely. I sat beside him, without saying anything else. You can't fix someone with a few encouraging words. Sometimes silent presence matters more. When Noah finally calmed down a little, I said, "Noah, it's time for you to leave this toxic marriage." He said nothing, no agreement, no refusal. I knew that hesitation well, born from loyalty, from fear of starting over, from the guilt of thinking he had failed. I held his hand. "Noah, you can't go back to a place that hurts you like this. You've tried harder than anyone, but love is an endless endurance." He looked at me, eyes still red. "I'm scared, Mom." I nodded. Everyone is scared when they leave a place they once called home. But Noah, if you stay, they will destroy you. Then I let the final sentence fall, soft but absolute. "They want to break you, Noah, but I will not let them." Noah lowered his head. New tears fell into his hands. But unlike the tears from the nights before, these were the tears of someone finally letting go of a weight that had crushed him for far too long. That night, Noah slept on the old sofa where he used to lie and watch cartoons as a little boy. I tucked a blanket around him, just like when he was small, then walked into the kitchen where my blue notebook lay open on the table. I wrote a line bolder than any line before. It's time to act. The next morning, I called Henry and said, "It's time for the next step." Henry didn't ask if I was sure. He just said, "Pierce Manufacturing is at its weakest point in history. If you're going to make a move, now is the moment." I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Every financial lesson, every consultation, every page of notes, all leading to one decision. I submitted a formal offer to acquire Pierce Manufacturing through Turner Strategic Holdings. It was an offer to purchase a controlling stake at a low price, but one that reflected the company's collapsing condition. An offer Randall couldn't ignore, but also couldn't accept easily. I sent the documents through legal channels, ensuring my identity stayed hidden. Randall would only see the name of an emerging investment firm, not Maggie Turner, age 66, from Raleigh, North Carolina. My hand trembled when I hit send, but it wasn't fear. It was the feeling of finally standing up after being pushed into a corner for far too long. 3 days later, I received a call from Henry. "Maggie, you need to hear this," Henry said quickly. "Randall, he's panicking." I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. What did he say? He has no idea who Turner Strategic Holdings is. He thinks it's a competitor who found out his weakness. He's calling every investor he knows, but no one wants to touch a sinking company. I stayed silent as Henry continued. "Randall is desperate. You chose the perfect moment." I looked out the window. Winter snow had started to fall, the flakes light but cold, just like the feeling inside me. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't want revenge for myself. I was simply doing what a mother must do, protect her child from hands that wanted to destroy his life. This war was only beginning. After Henry told me Randall was spiraling because of the buyout offer, I knew the final opening had come. A man like Randall, who lived his whole life perched on the top of power, loses all composure when thrown into desperation. I only needed to wait for the moment he lost his footing and strike. And that moment came sooner than I expected. 3 days after the offer was sent, Randall called an emergency meeting at Pierce Manufacturing's headquarters. The news reached me through Henry just hours after Randall made his plea. "He's trying to bring in investors at any cost," Henry said over the phone. "But Maggie, I'm certain, no one wants to touch a company collapsing this fast." I wasn't surprised. The companies that smelled danger had quietly pulled away long ago. The unfinished projects, the mounting debts, the lawsuits hanging over them. All of it made Pierce Manufacturing look like a sinking ship everyone wanted to abandon. Only Randall kept clinging to the wreckage as if it were his own pride. After the meeting, Randall called more than 10 longtime partners. Henry's sources reported 9 rejected him immediately, 2 stalled, and 1 said, "Randall, I'm sorry, I can't save a sinking ship." I could imagine him slamming his fist, yelling, pacing through his office with fury. But I didn't care about his emotions, only the timing. This was exactly when he was at his weakest. While Randall scrambled for a lifeline, Henry and I finalized the offer through Turner Strategic Holdings. We offered to buy 60% of the shares, enough to take full control, at a price far below what they claimed the company was worth. But it was a price that perfectly reflected the truth, an offer sharp enough to hit Randall's fear, yet realistic enough to leave him with no other option. Henry sent the negotiation packet. Randall replied in less than 2 hours. A single message: "We need to meet." That was the moment I knew Randall had lost. When a man of power reaches out to a nameless investor, it means he has run out of moves. But I still kept the strategy. Total silence. I let Henry handle it while I stayed in the shadows. Randall met Henry at a fancy restaurant in Charlotte. I wasn't there, but Henry recounted every detail as if I had been sitting at the next table. Randall, the same man who once made Noah kneel on the floor, showed up looking worn out, disheveled hair, crooked tie, dark circles under his eyes. He opened his laptop, scrolling through slides, trying to convince Henry that the company was just going through temporary difficulties. Henry kept a calm expression, then said only, "We know the real situation. This is our final offer." Randall turned pale, but he signed. Not because he trusted Turner Strategic Holdings, not because he believed he would be rescued. He signed because he had no other choice. A man who built his life on absolute dominance had, for the first time, sold his authority to people he didn't even know. I could imagine the tremor in his hand as he held that pen. What relieved me most was that Noah still had no idea. I didn't want my son to feel like a burden. I didn't want him thinking I fought this battle because he was weak. I wanted Noah to stand tall on the day he learned the truth, seeing me not as a rescuer, but as a mother protecting her child from cruelty he never deserved. Noah asked me a few times why I was so busy, why I left the house at unusual hours. I only said I was helping a friend from church organize storage files. He believed me. He believed me because Noah always believes me, and that made me even more determined not to slip. While Randall signed in despair, Olivia, sharp, calculating, born into the world of wealth, began to suspect something. She did not sit still. She dug through documents, checked investment firm directories, even called friends in finance to ask about Turner Strategic Holdings. But of course, she found nothing. Turner Strategic Holdings was created precisely to reveal nothing. Henry once joked, "Maggie, you hide your tracks better than the young investors." I knew Olivia was only worried about her family, her father, her family's reputation. Not for a single second did she worry about Noah, the man she had vowed to love for life. Thinking of that brought a mixture of sadness and resolve to my heart. Noah deserved someone who lived for their marriage, not someone who hid the truth to protect her elite lineage. In the midst of all the chaos, I maintained silence. No reaction, no acceleration, no hesitation. A silence that kept the enemy guessing. A silence that made Randall believe he still had room to negotiate. In reality, everything was already set. The transfer contracts were signed. Randall's lawyer confirmed the transaction. Henry prepared every legal document to ensure the acquisition proceeded smoothly, cleanly, and without giving Randall any chance to fight back. One rainy afternoon, Henry sent me the thick stack of final paperwork. He said, "It only comes down to one final step now, announcing the new owner." I held the stack of documents, feeling the cold at my fingertips, not from fear, but because I knew that moment would be the moment Randall Pierce lost everything, and I would be the one to witness it. That night, I sat alone in my living room, the desk lamp casting a warm glow over the papers spread out before me. I thought of every tear Noah had shed, every insult he had endured, every night he slept on my sofa after being thrown out of his home. I wasn't looking for victory. I wasn't hungry for some dramatic revenge. I just wanted Randall to understand one thing. He had chosen the wrong person to hurt. And I wanted Noah to stand up again, no longer living in fear. I closed the file. I knew tomorrow would be a day Randall would never forget for the rest of his life. The announcement of the new owner was scheduled for 9 a.m., and at exactly 8:58, I, Margaret Maggie Turner, the 66-year-old mother Randall once dismissed, walked into the conference room. At 8:58 that morning, I entered Pierce Manufacturing's headquarters with the calm of someone who had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Not pride, not personal revenge, but the quiet resolve of a mother doing what was necessary to protect her child. The large conference room on the 14th floor was already packed. Directors, department heads, in-house attorneys, and the entire leadership team sat in formal rows. Every head turned when the door opened. A few unfamiliar faces looked at me with polite curiosity. They had no idea who I was. I liked that. I wanted to walk into their world like an unexpected gust of wind. And then I saw Randall Pierce. He stood at the head of the table, his usual dark blue suit looking wrinkled, his face exhausted, as if he hadn't slept in days. But what struck me most were his eyes, the same eyes that once looked at Noah with contempt, now filled with fear. As I stepped farther into the room, Randall's eyes widened in disbelief, his face drained of color in a single breath. He stammered, voice cracking, What are you doing here?" A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. A few people shot uneasy glances at each other, whispering under their breath. I could feel the tension spreading like tiny waves across still water. I didn't sit down immediately. I stood at the head of the table, placed my handbag on a chair, and took out the thick file Henry had prepared. I set it onto the table with a sharp, echoing thud, louder than any spoken declaration. I looked straight at Randall and said slowly, "I am the new owner of Pierce Industries, Mr. Randall." There are moments in life when the air seems to split in two. This was one of them. The entire room went silent. The chief financial officer dropped his pen. Another director's mouth fell open, no sound coming out. The company's in-house attorney froze, turning toward Randall as if asking, "Is she telling the truth?" And Randall? He no longer carried even a shadow of his former authority. He stepped back half a pace, arms slack at his sides, his whole body collapsing inward. Finally, he sank into his chair, completely undone. I could hear his breathing, short, panicked. And in that moment, I saw the man who once forced my son to kneel on a dirty floor, now pushed to the edge of his own ruin. Part of me felt the sting of witnessing a man break so completely. But the other part, the part that had watched Noah be crushed day after day, understood this was the price Randall had earned. I continued, my voice calm but firm. "You signed the transfer agreement, didn't you? Therefore, today I'm announcing to the entire board, Turner Strategic Holdings, led by me, is the new owner of the company." Again, the room fell into absolute stillness. No one dared breathe too loudly. Randall placed a trembling hand on the table. No, you can't. You don't have this kind of money. You don't have the resources. This can't be real." He choked on his own words. "It can't be you." I looked at him, not with triumph, but with a clarity he could no longer deny. "You think a mother can't do this?" I tilted my head, speaking even more deliberately. "You misjudged the wrong person from the very beginning, Randall, and you misjudged my son." A hesitant voice spoke up, the head of Human Resources. "Excuse me. Does this mean all current company operations fall under your decision-making now?" I nodded. "Exactly." A hum of whispers spread across the room. I saw fear, confusion, but also a glimmer of hope in the eyes of those who had suffered under Randall's chaotic leadership. They didn't know who I was, but they understood one thing. Anyone who wasn't Randall was an improvement. Just when the atmosphere was stretched to the breaking point, the conference room doors burst open. Olivia stormed in, her heels striking the marble floor with sharp, angry clicks. "Dad, I heard something." She scanned the room, and then her eyes landed on me. For a moment, she looked like she had seen a ghost. Without anyone speaking, she understood. "No, it can't be you." She stepped forward. "You can't be. This company belongs to my family." I turned toward her. "Not anymore, Olivia." Her face flushed bright red, her voice rising. "Dad, do something. Take the company back. This is Pierce Manufacturing. You can't let some outsider, someone like her—" She didn't finish her sentence because Randall shouted, "Olivia, stop!" It was the first time I'd ever heard him yell at her like that. Olivia froze, trembling with rage. Randall muttered, almost to himself, I signed it. I can't undo it. Everything is legally binding." Olivia whipped back toward me, venom in her eyes. "What did you do? What trick did you use? Did you trap my father?" I placed both hands on the table, my voice soft but sharp enough to cut through steel. "No tricks, no traps, no coercion. Your father signed willingly because he drove this company to the ground and no one else wanted to save it." Olivia clenched her jaw and turned back to her father. "Dad, tell me you didn't actually sign." Randall said nothing. He simply slumped deeper into his chair, one hand covering his face, the picture of defeat. When no one could challenge me any longer, I straightened up and opened the official document from Henry. "I have a formal announcement." All eyes turned to me. Effective immediately, the entire leadership structure will be reorganized. Some positions will remain, some will change based on merit. I promise no one will lose their job unless tied to financial misconduct. A wave of relief washed through part of the room. Others glanced nervously at Randall. I scanned the room and delivered the final blow. "The era of Randall Pierce is over." Randall jerked upright as if stabbed. Olivia's face went ghost white with fury. But it was the truth. And sometimes the truth arrives wearing the face of a simple mother they once underestimated. When everything was said and done, I gathered my documents while the leadership team sat frozen in disbelief. Randall couldn't stand. Olivia stormed out like a storm unleashed. I walked toward the door, then turned and said, "This meeting is adjourned. At 3 this afternoon, I want all department heads present for the restructuring briefing." Everyone nodded instantly. The first time they followed instructions without Randall's voice behind them. I stepped into the hallway, and right then, I pulled out my phone and called the only person who needed to be here on this monumental day. When Noah answered, I spoke slowly. "Noah, can you come to Pierce? I need you. But I want to tell you the reason face to face." I left the conference room with steady, deliberate steps. Not to flaunt victory, but to let the air settle before the next storm began. I knew Noah's arrival would be the pivotal moment, not just for him, but for the entire Pierce empire. I stood in the hallway watching employees walk by with confused, curious glances. They must have wondered who this older woman in a simple brown knit coat was, and how, in a matter of minutes, everything they knew about their company had changed. I waited about 10 minutes before the elevator opened. Noah stepped out. Still the same gentle face, still the same tired eyes, not yet healed from months of emotional strain. But now there was something else, uncertainty mixed with hope. He looked around, searching for me among the stairs. When he spotted me, He hurried over, worry written all over his face. "Mom, what's going on? You called me here. Are you okay?" I nodded. "I'm fine, Noah. I just need you here to hear something important." He squinted, confused. I placed my hand on his shoulder, soft but firm, and said, "Son, I am the new owner of this company." Noah froze, completely froze. I watched his lips part, but no sound came out. In a few seconds, his expression shifted from shock to disbelief to utter astonishment. No way. He stepped back. "Mom, what are you talking about? How could you—" His voice cracked. I smiled gently, shaking my head. "You don't need to ask how. You just need to know I did it for you, for everything you endured." Noah lifted a hand to cover his face. I heard his breath hitch, then a soft, uncontrollable sob escaped. "Mom, you didn't have to do all of this for me. I'm not worth you carrying such a burden. I cupped his face between my hands and made him look straight at me. "Noah, listen to me." My voice was low but steady. "I didn't do this for revenge. I did it so you would know you deserve respect. You deserve to stand tall, not kneel before anyone." Tears rolled down Noah's cheeks. He pulled me into a tight embrace, as if afraid that letting go would make everything disappear. "Thank you, Mom. But are you sure? This is huge." I brushed his hair gently. "Noah, nothing is too big when it comes to protecting my child." After giving Noah a few minutes to calm down, I led him into the conference room next door, a smaller, quieter room, just right for a private conversation. When the door closed, I sat down across from him and opened the folder Henry had prepared. "Noah," I said, "I have an offer for you." He wiped his eyes, trying to steady himself. "What kind of offer?" I slid the folder toward him. "You will become the new CEO of Pierce Industries." Noah looked at me as if I had just said something impossible. "Mom, I can't. I'm not capable enough. I don't even know how they run half the departments here. I raised a hand, signaling him to stop. "You are not Randall. You don't need to know everything on day one." I leaned back in my chair. "But you have something Randall never had: kindness, humility, and a sincere desire to do what's right for this company." Noah lowered his head, his voice trembling. "Mom, I lost my confidence. I don't believe in myself anymore." I smiled gently and touched his hand. "That's okay. I believe in you, and sometimes having just one person believe is enough." Noah kept his eyes closed for a long moment, then exhaled slowly. "Mom, I'll try. I can't promise I'll be perfect, but I will try." I nodded, feeling half of the weight in my chest lift. When Noah and I stepped into the hallway, many employees were already gathered. They had heard the news from the earlier meeting and were waiting to see what would happen next. And something unexpected occurred. When Noah walked beside me, the entire hallway fell silent. No mocking laughter like before. No snide whispers the way it used to be when Randall ordered him around. They looked at Noah differently, with curiosity, with uncertainty, and with a dawning realization that the person who once stood at the bottom might now be someone they needed to pay attention to. I heard a few murmurs. Is it really him? Noah? No way. I glanced at Noah and smiled. "Come on, son, it's time for you to meet everyone." Back in the large conference room, Randall was still sitting there. His face was ashen, as if he had aged 10 years in a single morning. When Noah walked in behind me, Randall shot up from his chair. "Noah, don't listen to her. You don't understand what's happening. She tricked—" I cut him off. "Randall, you do not have the right to speak to the new CEO in that tone." The room seemed to tilt for a moment. New CEO? Randall repeated, his eyes empty. I nodded. Yes, Noah Turner is the new CEO of Pierce Manufacturing. Randall staggered as if someone had punched him straight in the chest. No, impossible. He has no experience. He's just... I held his gaze. He is far more capable than you ever allowed him to be. And he certainly deserves better treatment than what you gave him. No one said a word. The room was utterly silent. I turned to the in-house attorney and the leadership team. Starting today, Randall Pierce will hold the position of strategic advisor. Unpaid, with no signing authority and no involvement in company operations. The sentence fell like a verdict. Randall collapsed back into his chair. He had nothing left to say. And then Olivia arrived. She stood in the doorway, her face flushed red, her eyes swollen with rage. The moment she saw Noah standing beside me, she rushed forward, her anger exploding. Noah, are you out of your mind? You're letting your mother destroy my family? You're taking her side? Noah stepped back, but his voice was calmer than I expected. Olivia, don't talk about my mother like that. She let out a sharp, poisonous laugh. And who do you think you are? A failure whose mommy bought him a CEO title. You think anyone will respect you? Noah didn't move. For the first time in months, my son's eyes held no fear. Olivia, he said slowly, I want a divorce. The room gasped. Olivia's mouth fell open, no words coming out. Right here, right now, Noah continued. I want everything to end. I won't stay in a marriage where I'm nothing but a tool. Olivia dropped onto a chair, her eyes wide with shock and fury. I looked at Noah, standing tall, voice steady. And I knew my son was finally coming, back to himself. When the meeting ended, Randall was escorted out in silence. Olivia was helped away by a family member, and Noah and I remained in that sunlit room. Noah looked around, then at me. Mom, everything really has changed. I took his hand and squeezed it gently. Yes, Noah, a new era begins today. And deep inside, I knew this was the first day my son entered his life with a new posture, not kneeling, but standing tall, as someone worthy of respect. In the days after Noah officially became the new CEO of Pierce Industries, everything moved like a whirlwind that reassured me I had made the right decisions. Still, I never imagined the fall of the Pierce family would happen so swiftly, as if their entire empire had been held up by nothing but arrogance instead of any real foundation. The first thing Olivia did after that chaotic meeting was sue Noah. She hired an attorney, filed claims demanding marital assets, compensation for emotional damage, and a share of company equity Noah never even possessed when they married. Olivia showed up to court in an elegant dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled, trying to portray herself as the victim of a deceitful marriage. But she forgot one thing. Olivia was the one who forced Noah to sign a prenuptial agreement, a prenup drafted by the Pierce family's attorney, stating clearly that in the event of a divorce, Olivia could not claim any of Noah's assets, not even those acquired during the marriage. Henry told me what happened during the hearing. When the judge asked Olivia whether she recognized her signature at the bottom of the prenup, she froze for a moment before her face drained of color. Just one sentence. The court denies your request for asset division. And Olivia lost completely. She walked out of the courthouse with red-rimmed eyes, her face twisted with fury, while Noah stood beside Henry with a strange calm, perhaps because, for the first time, he felt the law protecting him. Meanwhile, Randall didn't fare any better. After I took over and released certain internal documents, investigators began noticing irregularities he had tried to hide. Not revenge, just cleaning up the financial system so the company wouldn't collapse. But that also meant Randall Pierce finally had to face the financial misconduct he had committed. Every week brought a new inquiry. The reputation he once built with lavish parties and boastful speeches was now nothing but an empty shell. A major business paper even published an article titled "The Randall Pierce Empire Collapse from Within." I took no pleasure in it. It was simply the inevitable result of a man who valued his ego more than integrity. Olivia didn't escape consequences either. Charlotte's business community is small and word spreads fast. Everyone knew how she treated Noah, knew about her absurd lawsuit, and knew how she helped cover for her father. People who once showcased her as the golden daughter of wealth now avoided her like fire. A conference that had scheduled her as a keynote speaker removed her name overnight. A fashion brand froze all future collaborations. She had once stood in the spotlight, but that same spotlight exposed everything when the applause stopped. Olivia began avoiding public appearances, and then, one quiet morning, she left the city with a few expensive suitcases, leaving behind a reputation built on arrogance and money. While the Pierce family fell apart, the company, now renamed Turner Industries, stepped into a period of renewal. I didn't buy the company just for Noah. I wanted to build a workplace where Noah could be himself, kind, fair, and respectful. The first thing we did was restructure the compensation system, everything transparent. No more special allowance for Pierce relatives. We improved the work environment too. A cleaner cafeteria, upgraded restrooms, more comfortable office spaces. Small details, but they changed the atmosphere instantly. And I created an employee support fund, something Randall would never have considered. The most touching part came weeks later, when employees who had been bullied under Randall began visiting my office. Some said, "Thank you, I was about to quit last year." Another even cried, "I never thought this company could feel compassionate." Those words reminded me that my battle wasn't just for Noah. It was for the quiet people who had suffered under a tyrant. But what warmed me the most came from Noah. One late afternoon, I walked past his office and saw him smiling, a real smile. The first real smile I'd seen in years. His eyes were brighter, his voice steadier, his posture straight. My son was standing tall again. That night when he left the office, I asked, "Did you have a good day, Noah?" He smiled softly, a simple smile that warmed my heart. "Yes, Mom. I haven't felt this like myself in years." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You deserve it." A week later, Randall sent me a letter. I didn't open it right away. I set the white envelope on my desk, feeling no anger, no triumph, just peace. When I finally opened the letter, I saw just a few lines. "Maggie, I'm sorry for everything. I was wrong. Wrong to Noah, wrong to the company, wrong to myself." I read all of it. A long letter filled with regret. Then folded it back up. I didn't reply. Not because I hated him, but because some apologies exist only to ease the weight on the one who speaks, not to heal the one who hears. And I was no longer responsible for easing Randall's conscience. A few months later, Olivia left Charlotte quietly. No goodbyes, no farewell dinner. She left behind only a handful of old friends, the same people who had quickly turned their backs on her the moment she stumbled. I heard the news through a contact in the industry. Olivia had moved to another state, away from all attention. A sad ending for a woman who once believed the whole world would forever bow at her feet. And Noah. At a local community meeting about a volunteer art project, he met a woman a few years younger. Her name was Emily Hart, a gentle and empathetic art teacher. I saw the way Noah spoke to her. No tension, no fear, no need to earn approval. Just a soft, genuine smile. As they stood together, I saw something I had been waiting for a very long time. Hope. Not for the company, not for reputation, but for my son's life. The months that followed moved at an entirely different rhythm. If once Noah went to work with dread on his shoulders, now each morning seemed like a fresh start. Clearer, lighter, and full of meaning. I watched that change with all the pride a mother could feel. Noah walked into the office with a confidence I hadn't seen since he was little. Not loud or arrogant, but calm, steady, the kind of confidence that comes from finally knowing your worth. Employees greeted him with respect, not the kind of flattery people show to power, but genuine respect for someone who truly listened, understood, and stood up for them. I heard many say that since Noah took over as CEO, the company felt entirely different. Meetings weren't chaotic anymore. Ideas that were once dismissed under Randall were now considered. A longtime employee told me during the quarterly review, "Mr. Noah makes us feel like we matter. It's been a long time since I came to work without that heavy feeling." I smiled when I heard that, because I knew kindness heals far more deeply than dominance ever could. The restructuring, guided by me and Henry, combined with Noah's natural leadership, slowly pulled the company back from the edge. Old debts were paid, new contracts were signed, and most importantly, employee morale skyrocketed. I remember the morning Noah walked into my living room holding the financial report. His eyes sparkled like a child who just got a perfect grade. "Mom, we made a profit this quarter." I laughed, cupped his face in my hands. "Noah, you did it." He shook his head gently. "Not me, us." I didn't argue. Even if he said that, I knew it was Noah who stood at the front, who changed how Pierce, now Turner Industries, operated, who cleaned up the mess Randall left behind. My son, the same boy who once knelt to wipe coffee off the floor for his father-in-law, was now standing before an entire board of directors with steady shoulders. And me. For the first time in years, I could finally live a little for myself. I replanted the garden behind my house, the one I had neglected during all those months of supporting Noah. I bought a few pots of lavender for the porch, and every morning I sat outside with a book, soaking in the soft early sun. In the afternoons, I rocked gently on the swing beneath the maple tree. I realized I had walked through a lifetime of storms. But I had never been broken, and now I could finally breathe slowly, gently, peacefully. People started calling me Powerhouse Maggie or the woman who brought Randall down, but I always laughed and shook my head. I was just a mother who did what she had to do to protect her child. Then one day, Noah invited me to dinner at a small restaurant downtown. He said someone wanted to meet me. I went curious, though trying to keep my usual calm. When I walked in, I saw Emily, the woman Noah had mentioned a few times, with her gentle eyes and a warm, honey-colored smile. "Mom, this is Emily," Noah introduced, his voice a little shaky. Emily stood, reached out, and took my hand, softly, sincerely. "It's such a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Turner. Noah talks about you often." I looked into her eyes. Something in them reassured me instantly. The purity of a heart without calculation, so different from Olivia. Emily wasn't trying to impress me. She was just being herself. and that simplicity made me feel at ease. The dinner was simple: salad, warm soup, grilled salmon, but it was one of the gentlest meals I had shared in years. I watched how Emily spoke to Noah, kind, respectful, never demanding. Noah listened, smiling, sometimes leaning toward her as if warmed from within. When Emily stepped outside to take a call, Noah leaned toward me. "What do you think of her, Mom?" I placed my hand over his, squeezed gently. "Noah, I've never seen anyone look at you the way she does. Without judgment, without expectations, just love." Noah bowed his head, a quiet smile forming. "I think so, too." As for Randall, he tried many times to reach Noah. Emails, letters, requests to meet as father and son. But Noah wasn't interested. Not out of hatred. He was simply exhausted. And because some doors, once closed, never reopen, not out of cruelty, but because the person who walked through them no longer belongs to the darkness behind them. One day Noah told me, "Mom, I don't want to go back to the old life. I don't want to hear excuses anymore. I just want peace and to be who I really am." I nodded. That decision didn't punish anyone. It saved him. During the company's anniversary celebration, the first one under the new name Turner Industries, the organizers unexpectedly invited me on stage to speak. I was startled. I had always preferred staying behind the scenes. But when the lights shone on me and I looked down at the crowd, employees who had survived chaos and witnessed rebirth, something inside me softened. The host introduced me with a sentence that stilled my heart. "Please welcome the woman who changed the fate of an entire corporation." I stepped onto the small wooden podium. I didn't say much, only what I truly believed. I didn't change anyone's fate. I just stood up at a moment when I knew that if I didn't, the person I loved most would be crushed, and I believe any mother here would have done exactly what I did. Below, many people nodded. Some even wiped their eyes. I didn't need recognition. Seeing them smile, that was the greatest honor. The biggest change arrived on an early autumn afternoon. Soft sunlight, gentle breeze touching the maple leaves behind the building. Noah brought Emily to meet me in the small garden near the administrative wing. "Mom, I have something to tell you," he said, nervous in the way someone gets when they're about to step into a new life. I looked at him, already sensing something in his eyes. Then Noah took out a small box and opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant silver ring. He inhaled deeply and said with steady clarity, "Mom, I want to propose to Emily, and I wanted you to be the first person to know." Emotion filled my chest. Warmth, gratitude, relief all at once. I hugged him and whispered, "Noah, you found your light." Emily stood beside him, eyes glistening, and I simply smiled. In that moment, I understood that everything I had done, every pain, every battle, every confrontation, had finally brought my son exactly where he belonged. A healthy life, a kind love, a future he truly deserves. The day Noah and Emily, or rather Elise Emily Hart, as I learned from the wedding invitation, held their ceremony, the sky felt as if it was blessing them. The wedding was held at a small ranch outside Charlotte, with a wide green lawn and strings of warm yellow lights hanging like stars at dusk. Noah had said he didn't want a grand wedding. He wanted something intimate, where people could hear each other's laughter without being drowned out by loud music. It was soft, simple, yet warmer than any lavish party Olivia ever boasted about. As guests arrived, I stood in the front row by the flower-lined aisle. I wore a navy dress holding a small bouquet Elise had prepared for me. "I want Mom Maggie to look beautiful today," she had said. I chuckled. But in my heart, something tightened. Maybe because I had spent so many years fearing Noah would never find someone who truly loved him. But today, in that golden glow, I knew he had. The music began. Everyone fell silent. Noah walked out first, not in the expensive suit Olivia once forced on him, but in a simple light gray suit. His face glowed. His eyes held a whole horizon. Then Elise appeared, a soft white dress, simple, flowing, her hair half tied with tiny flowers, her eyes fixed on Noah, and only Noah. I heard the guests whisper, "They're beautiful together. That look, that's real love." But I barely heard them. My chest had already tightened with joy. When Elise reached him and they joined hands, the officiant smiled and began the vows. But when Noah spoke, his voice trembled. "Elise, you came into my life when I thought I had lost everything. You showed me what peace feels like. You look at me with an expression I never knew, no demands, no judgment, only love." Elise's eyes shimmered with tears, and I cried too. When it was Elise's turn, her voice was soft as a breeze. "Noah, you are the kindest man I've ever met. I didn't love you because of your title or your circumstances, but because of your heart. A heart that has never stopped wanting to do what's right." Those words soothed every wound Noah had ever carried. After the ceremony, the reception took place on the lawn. The sun slipped down and the warm lights above us glowed like a net of tiny stars. People laughed, clinked glasses, and swayed to gentle music. Then came Noah's speech. He stepped onto the small platform, holding a glass, eyes fixed on me. I froze for a moment, but he smiled, calming my heart instantly. "Mom," Noah began, voice deep and full of feeling, "if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here today. There was a time I believed I had no worth, no future. But you saw what I had lost in myself. You stood up and fought for me when I couldn't stand up for myself." He placed his hand over his chest, as if steadying his own heart. "When you saved me, you didn't just save my life. You gave me a new one." I couldn't hold back anymore. Tears streamed down my face. The people sitting near me handed me tissues, and all I could do was smile through the tears. My son, the boy who once cried in my arms after being humiliated, was now standing before everyone, speaking with strength and gratitude. Nothing could make a mother happier. But then, I saw a familiar figure beyond the fence. A man stood at a distance, hand resting on the wooden rail, eyes fixed on the ceremony. No one else noticed him, only me, Randall Pierce. He didn't step inside. He didn't interrupt the wedding. He didn't hide in the shadows. He stood there quietly, his face looking much older than the last time I'd seen him. His eyes carried a sadness he couldn't mask. The sadness of a man who had lost everything. His reputation, his power, and worst of all, the son-in-law who once called him father. For a moment, our eyes met across the yard. Just a moment. I didn't nod. I didn't turn away. I didn't sneer. I simply looked at him calmly, without hatred, without resentment, just letting go. And I knew that was the right ending, for both me and Randall. The ceremony continued, full of laughter. Elise took my hand and said, "I know Noah is as strong as he is because of you. Thank you for protecting him, for bringing him back." I smiled. "No, it was him. I only nudged him at the right time." Elise shook her head and held my hand tighter. "No one can lift someone who's fallen to the bottom unless they're a mother." I almost cried again, but instead I squeezed her hand gently, letting it be my thank you. When the reception ended, Noah and Elise walked over to me under the warm string lights. "We want you to move in with us," Elise said. "We want to take care of you as you get older." I laughed, half teasing, half touched. I'm not old yet, but I'll think about it. The truth was, I had been thinking about it for weeks because I knew my age was heading toward the years when care would matter, and because I knew those two didn't see me as a burden, but as family they wanted to protect. A few weeks later, I began writing this entire story, not to boast about being clever or strong, but to speak to other mothers silently enduring injustice. I wrote with the heart of someone who had known loss, disrespect, and being cornered, yet stood back up because of love for her son. On every page, I repeated one thing. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it to restore fairness. Any mother on this earth, whether in North Carolina or anywhere else, would understand that. A mother's love isn't noise. It isn't threats or anger. It is steady, patient, quiet at times, but strong enough to change a destiny. And when I placed the final period on my story, the image in my mind wasn't of battles won, or Randall collapsing, or Olivia leaving. It was the moment Noah took Elise's hand and slid the ring onto her finger beneath the golden light. I knew my son's future was safe. I knew my family had healed. I closed my eyes and took a long breath. A long journey had ended, and a new life was opening, not just for Noah, but for me, a feeling complete, light, and peaceful. When everything began to settle, when Noah and Elise had stepped into their new life together, I found myself forming a habit, reflecting on all of it in the quiet, late afternoons, when the last sunlight spilled through the window and lit up the pages of my notebook on the table. Sometimes I stopped for a long time, rereading the shaky lines I'd written during the darkest moments. Sometimes I wondered, how did I make it here? I remembered the exact moment it all began. The day I stood at the door of the conference room and saw Noah kneeling on the floor, wiping coffee with his bare hands, his face burning with humiliation. In that moment, my chest felt crushed. No mother is born to watch her child be degraded like that. But if someone asked me which moment changed me, it wasn't when I saw him being mistreated. It was the moment I turned and walked away. The moment I understood that if I reacted then, Randall would destroy my son in ways far worse. The moment I knew I had to choose my battlefield, and from that moment, a long journey unfolded. I looked back on everything. Those sleepless nights filled with anger and heartbreak for Noah. The times I silently observed, waited, collected small clues that later became the foundation of the biggest strike of my life. I remembered every call with Henry, every trembling signature on the papers creating the shell company. Every morning I sat in my living room teaching myself finance so I wouldn't become prey in a world full of traps. I remembered the feeling of walking into that conference room, Randall frozen in place at the sight of me, my hands slightly shaking as I set the file on the table while trying to appear calm. And I remembered even more clearly Noah's face when he heard me say, "I am the new owner of Pierce." From a man humiliated and belittled, Noah rose to become CEO, not because of privilege, but because of the kind heart he had always carried. And watching him return to himself, standing tall again, was the greatest reward of my life. I realized every pain, every setback was just a stepping stone toward a strength I didn't know I possessed. I was not extraordinary. I was not the strongest. I was simply a mother who could not sit still while her son was being destroyed by arrogance and greed. There was nothing extraordinary about what I did. There was only love, sometimes quiet, sometimes fierce, but always steadfast. And that is my legacy. Not the company I bought, not defeating Randall, not becoming a symbol, as many at Turner Industries called me, but giving Noah back the future he deserved, helping him see his own worth, helping him leave a toxic marriage and find a kinder love. If life has any meaning for me, it is that. I hope my story, a story of an ordinary mother refusing to bow to injustice, reminds whoever is listening, your dignity, your self-respect, your future must never be bargained away. If someone is stepping on you to lift themselves higher, remember you are stronger than you think. You deserve more than what life sometimes shows you. And if you've ever been belittled, pushed into a corner, please believe there are new doors waiting for you to open. I say this not as someone who won, but as someone who once trembled, once felt fear, once sat alone at night thinking she wasn't strong enough to go on. But I did. And if I could, you can too. Now, as I write these last lines, Noah and Elise are in the kitchen preparing dinner. I hear their laughter, the clink of glasses, the soft shuffle of their steps. The house is full of warmth. I know I no longer need to worry. The future is steady. My son is happy, and my heart is at peace. Thank you, you who are listening, for walking with me through this long journey of tears, hurt, hope, and rebirth. If you're still here, it means my story touched a part of your heart, and that means more to me than you know. Where in the world are you listening from? I truly want to know. Every comment, even a single line, makes me feel like I didn't tell this story alone. Please leave a comment, share your thoughts. I promise I'll read every word. And if stories of justice, love, resilience, and the strength of age bring you comfort, hit subscribe and like the video so we can meet again on another journey, where I continue telling stories of people who seem fragile but carry storms within them. Thank you for being here, for staying, for listening to a mother's heart. To me, your presence is a greater gift than any victory.